Chapter 59. After teaching Dosen how to release magic through brute force, List felt a sense of accomplishment. After all, I am a person who understands science. Experiment, do more experiments, this was the foundation of science. Just like how he easily figured out the state of the space ring, stationary it could store ordinary objects but not living things, the space ring would immediately obliterate the soul. List believed that the soul was also a movement of some kind of substance. After stationary the soul would perish. He repeatedly put things in and took things out, experimenting with the consumption of magic power. At this stage, using the space ring consumed a bit too much magic power. He was busy, yet his life was very fulfilling. However, in the next 2 days he began to feel bored. The sprite worms had all been properly settled, so there was no need for him to worry about them. The agriculture and fishing industries were thriving, so there was no need for him to worry about them. The construction of roads was slow but orderly, and the foundations of the beachcombing settlements' houses had also begun to be excavated. The night squad candidates were undergoing Marcus test, so there was no need for him to pay attention to them. He had thoroughly fallen into the lifestyle of the majority of aristocrats, so bored that he could only look for things to do. If he was close to the city he could still hold balls, banquets, or go hunting and expand his aristocratic connections. However, the flower town was quite isolated. There were only 4 people who were qualified to eat with him. He could not prepare banquets for the 4 of them every day. Therefore, List decided to find something else to do. He intended to attack the Thorns Ridge ahead of time. The Thorns Ridge is the biggest obstacle to the flower town. It must be broken through, otherwise, it would be very difficult to communicate with the Coral City. As a modern person, List was quite clear about the importance of information exchange. He had talked with Levis about the matter of human trafficking, yet there was no guarantee that Levis would take it seriously. Calculating the time, the Tulip fleet was about to return. If Levis forgot to make arrangements for the next trade trip, then he would have to wait at least 3 months before there would be a new opportunity. The fleet would have to pass through many islands on a trade trip, which would take at least 3 months. If he missed this opportunity, the development of the flower town would be delayed for another 3 months. Although he was not pressed for time, but List still did not want to waste it. World of Warcraft is hard to deal with for now, but that's because World of Warcraft can launch sneak attacks at any time. If I cut down all the trees in the Thorns Ridge, would World of Warcraft still be able to defeat Marcus in the wilderness? Besides, I am not a vegetarian. Even if I am a vegetarian, the red blood sword in my hand will drink blood. A gem weapon would be a great help against low-level World of Warcraft. It might not be able to cut a hair, but the ruby embedded in it would resonate with magic and combat aura, which would at least double List's combat power. Clang. He pulled out the red blood sword and gripped it tightly with both hands. This was a 2-handed sword suitable for riding a horse and slashing. Cold light shot out from the silver-white sword. Heart of Fire Dragon Drill. With a light shout, List brandished the sword with both hands and slashed forward. The ultimate meaning of the Fire Dragon Drill was unleashed. Flames rose from the red blood sword and charged forward. The air was scorched, giving off crackling explosions. This was a move that allowed man and horse to unite. During this time, List had been studying it and could already display it alone. Moreover, he could concentrate the attack in one direction without hurting himself. He sheathed the sword and stood erect. The flames in the air dissipated and everything returned to normal. Only the still scorching temperature indicated that someone had just unleashed a big move. He exhaled lightly. If there was a wind-blade wolf in front of me, then it would have already died. He was already proficient in the Fire Dragon Drill. He was no longer a beginner Earth Knight. He already had the strength to fight, just that he lacked actual combat experience. He intended to continue studying the Fire Surge Fluctuations. The Fire Surge Fluctuations was a group battle chi secret manual suitable for a knight's charge and needed to be coordinated with a mount. Of the 4 retainer knight, 3 went to cooperate with Marcus in selecting a knight squad. Only Grey Sickle was still standing by his side. Grey, carry my knight spear, I want to get on a horse and practice spear skills. Yes, sir. They arrived at the horse farm. The emerald green alfalfa stretched as far as the eye could see. The alfalfa grew the most vigorously near the alfalfa worm stalk. This grassland was occupied by Black Dragon, and other horses didn't dare to graze here. Occasionally, Fiery Dragon would sneak over to eat a few mouthfuls, but when it was discovered by Black Dragon, it would tear it apart. Black Dragon, who hadn't entered estrus, didn't care whether the other party was a stallion or a mare. Tom, who had just returned from fetching water, saw that there was no serving man following behind List, so he hurriedly came over and asked, Master, are you going to ride? Do you need me to fetch the harness? No need, you can go about your business. Yes, master. List whistled. Suddenly, a pure black steed trod on the wind. It was Black Dragon with dragon bloodline. Its shoulder height was at least 1.9 meters, a bit taller than List. Therefore it was necessary to jump on the horse. Riding such a tall horse was awe-inspiring. There were no reins, no saddle, and no pedals. Black Dragon's temperament simply didn't allow it to be bound by the harness. List didn't force it. He was now an Earth Knight, and his equestrian skill was getting more and more exquisite. By relying on his exquisite equestrian skill, he could become one with the horse without relying on the harness. Black Dragon, properly cooperate with me. Stroking Black Dragon's neck, List took the knight spear that Gray handed over. The spear was nearly 3 meters long and required a formidable strength to use. It was forged from fine steel, and the retainer knight would be oiled and maintained every day, so it shone with a silver luster. Snort. As if to show off its strength, Black Dragon's front hooves left the ground, its body half reared, and it faced the sun and neighed. Soon after, it carried List to gallop on the horse farm. Accompanied by List's control, it galloped, stopped, jumped, or turned. On its back, List controlled the horse while taking advantage of the situation to use the fire fluctuations. The knight spear was too long and couldn't be used like a one-handed sword. However, following Black Dragon's rhythm, each move and style had boundless might. Raging prairie fire slash. The angry roar made List surge the chi in his whole body and pour it into the knight spear. Black Dragon's heart moved at will and it madly leaped. The chi ignited the air, and the entire knight spear seemed to be on fire. It swept across the horse's back while it was leaping high. Reddish-yellow flames filled the sky and fell on the ground, instantly roasting the alfalfa and burning it to ashes. Buzz! Black Dragon landed on the ground and stood firm. List inserted the knight spear diagonally into the ground and calmed the chaotic chi in his body. This move, Raging Prairie Fire Slash, was the ultimate meaning of the fire fluctuations. It consumed a lot of chi, but it could sweep through a large area. When charging, this move could kill dozens of opponents in front of him. In particular, Black Dragon was full of strength, fast, and had a fierce temperament, allowing this move to display its greatest effect. This was something that could not be achieved when cooperating with Fiery Dragon. Unfortunately, you are going to become a stallion. I can't ride you to the battlefield. Of course, it is also unlikely that I will go to the battlefield myself. After dismounting, List patted Black Dragon's thigh and told it to graze on its own. List changed to another whistle and summoned Fiery Dragon. Riding Fiery Dragon, he went to the castle. Gray, go and call Teacher Gort. Yes, sir. After a moment, Gort rushed to the castle. List, what's the matter? I am going to cut down the trees in the Thorns Ridge, shrink the World of Warcraft habitat, and open up the road hindering the Flower Town's development, said List in high spirits. Gort frowned. Cutting down trees will inevitably encounter World of Warcraft. Wouldn't it be too risky? With me and Teacher Marcus personally escorting you, as long as you don't encounter a large number of World of Warcraft, there won't be any danger. After all, we will be fighting in an open area. Moreover, the Thorns Ridge's World of Warcraft is rare. I don't plan to cut down all of them, just the trees on both sides of the road. He would first cut down a part of the forest, then gradually shrink the World of Warcraft habitat. Once everything was ready, he would finish the battle in one fell swoop. Chapter 60. List is getting more and more active. He doesn't even have a quarter of an hour to rest all day. Isaiah, I haven't slept well for a week in a row. In the fief's administrative office, Gort vigorously fanned himself with thick bast paper. I originally thought that coming to the Flower Town would be a leisurely job. I didn't expect it to exhaust me so quickly. Obviously, an official who doesn't want to make progress is not an official that List expects. Isaiah, who was calculating this quarter's taxes with his fingers, said without raising his head, Gort, you should work harder. A comfortable life will wear down a knight's fighting spirit. It seems that you, like Blair, have taken a liking to life in the Flower Town. I remember that when you first arrived, you complained incessantly. When I first arrived, I was indeed very disappointed. It was dilapidated, crude, and there weren't even many people here. Isaiah exercised his numb fingers. However, after getting used to it, I felt that the Flower Town has an unprecedented vitality. I had a chat with Marcus. He said that List is an aristocrat that stands out from the masses. Indeed. Gort spread his hands. Therefore, I feel that Marcus' wish to rise to the ranks of aristocracy rests on List. Meanwhile, my hope to revitalize my family may also lie here. It seems that you are serious. I can't continue to be mediocre. For the sake of my stupid son, I have to pull myself together. Alright, I have to pull myself together. I will go take a look at the progress of the construction of the oyster settlement's houses. Currently, the entire fief is short of manpower. I have to use my brain to organize a logging team. Having said that, after leaving the administrative office, Gort did not go to the oyster settlement, but instead returned to his residence in the fief. It was a two-story building that was originally the residence of a knight in the taxation revenue division. Only lords could live in castles. Even if it was empty, ordinary people would not be able to live in it. Sir, you are back. Is today's work done? A young girl dressed in a flaxen skirt hurriedly came over and helped Gort take off his coat. Gort touched the girl's but naughtily. Work can never be finished, but life has to go on. The girl blushed. Won't Sir Lord blame you if you don't go to work? I'm List's teacher, the town's administrator. I have the right to give myself half a day off. Freya, I miss you. I'm not in the mood to work. With that said, Gort hugged Freya and kissed her on the cheek. Then he pushed the girl into the bedroom. Freya hurriedly struggled free and said in a panic, Sir, it's daytime now. What's wrong with the daytime? I've been eating too many oysters recently. I don't have enough time at night. Gort selectively chose to forget. Every night he could only persist once, and each time he could not last more than 30 seconds. Freya was a little flustered and seemed to be trying to change the topic. You seem to be in a bad mood. Is it because of the consultant? Of course I'm in a bad mood. He is the Lord and has the right to order me to work for him, even if I have to be busy from morning to night. However, I've already been in the flower town for 3 months, yet I still haven't gotten the position of consultant. Damn it, who else can serve as a consultant besides me? Gort fiercely hit the wall of the house, his tone full of indignation. I somewhat regret coming to the flower town. Freya's complexion changed. Sir, are you going to leave? Not for the time being. Freya, it's you who made me linger here, unwilling to go back and forth. Gort hugged Freya again and kissed her. Freya pushed him away forcefully. Gort's face suddenly turned gloomy. Freya, what do you mean? Freya took a deep breath and put on a smile again. I know that you are unhappy. You have been worrying about something these days. I guess that you want to return to the Coral City. It is a big city, countless times more prosperous than the flower town. I want to tell Sir that Freya will stay in the flower town and raise your child. Please don't worry about it. What do you mean? Gort's complexion changed again and again. I am pregnant. With just a few words, Gort immediately froze. It took him a long time to sober up. You are pregnant? Yes. Freya touched her stomach. Even though it was still flat, she could feel a strong little heart beating. While speaking, she suddenly retched. Gort no longer had any doubts. Freya was indeed pregnant, but he didn't know whether he should be pleasantly surprised or shocked. He had a wife and child in the Coral City. His child had already grown up and married a wife. Moreover, his grandson was born the year before last. He was just looking for a relationship to fill his loneliness. He never thought that there would be such a day. Oh heavens, Freya, I am in a mess right now. Sorry, I don't know how to deal with this news. Gort stammered. Freya just smiled. It doesn't matter, sir. I know that there is no better tomorrow for a serf like me. I am very grateful to Sir for giving me a happy memory. I will raise him independently and he will grow up healthy and strong. I just hope that when you leave, can you give him the status of a freedman? A freedman? Gort fell into hesitation and entanglement. Freya just looked at him with a smile. After a while, he exhaled deeply and finally made a decision. Sorry, Freya, I have let you down. Freya's smile quickly dimmed. But Gort's next words made her smile brighter again. I hesitated just now. I shouldn't have done that. I assure you that I will not, at least not for now, leave the flower town. I want to see him born and tell him his father's name, Gort Mast. I think I know what to do. I haven't been able to integrate into the flower town. Gort embraced Freya with warmth rather than lust. Because I am already an aristocrat, I am used to enjoying rather than struggling. I complained that List did not give me an advisory position, yet I don't work hard. But now I have to work hard and earn back the glory of an aristocrat for our child. Is this true, sir? Freya's eyes widened. Of course, I promise in the name of a knight. After a moment of tenderness, Gort broke away from the tenderness, put on his frac habillere and strode out of the house. This time he really went to the oyster settlement to inspect the construction of the houses. At night, the castle once again held a small banquet. Before the banquet started, Marcus, Blair and Isaiah chatted casually. Meanwhile, in the study, Gort was reporting the progress of his work to List. The main road from the Thorns Ridge to the town has already been built halfway. There is plenty of sand, but there is not enough stone. I have already begun to select able-bodied serfs to form a logging team. At the same time, the stones of the Thorns Ridge will be crushed and transported to build the road. If there is enough stone in the Thorns Ridge, then the sand roads between the settlements can also be paved with gravel. A very good plan. Let's carry it out, Teacher Gort. List nodded with satisfaction. It was not only the plan but also Gort's attitude. Previously, at the banquet, Gort would only bring his mouth to eat and drink and make some witty remarks, never taking the initiative to talk about work. Today he unexpectedly took the initiative to report on his work. Chapter 61. Tonight's staple is peanuts? Marcus skillfully peeled the peanuts. Wheat was admittedly the best choice for the staple, but the output of wheat was generally not high. Therefore, peanuts and peas were needed to fill the gap. How does it taste? List asked. There were no boiled peanuts in front of him. He did not like to eat boiled peanuts very much. Therefore, as the castle's master, the cook Abby had specially made him oatmeal. As for the others, they were not so lucky. It is moderately soft, but it is somewhat bland and tasteless. Gort continued, boiled peanuts taste like this. Eating it occasionally is good to improve the taste, but eating it often is enough. However, tonight's peanuts are bigger than usual. Have you noticed? Marcus suddenly understood. The peanut settlement's peanuts have been harvested? This is the first batch of peanuts near the peanut worm stalk. The output is 30% more than usual, and the planting cycle is also shortened by a month. This year there will be no shortage of peanuts in the castle. I think that Mrs. Abby should grind some peanut butter and spread it on the bread, making it fragrant all day long. The Flower Town's sole gourmet was none other than Gort. This Lord Knight was always talking non-stop about food and drink. List smiled slightly. If it is paired with gin, wouldn't it be wonderful? Oh List, you still understand me, haha. Unfortunately, the gin brought back from the Coral City last time has been drunk. To be honest, I really don't want to hear this news. In fact, there is even more depressing news. List sipped his oatmeal. The wine cellar has reached its limit. Mr. Carter does not recommend that we continue to drink red wine. Otherwise, we will not be able to support the festival expenses for the latter half of the year. As for the beer with hops is almost finished, leaving only sour beer. Heavens, that's not true, is it? List did not respond. The butler Carter, who was serving the banquet, answered, the weather is getting hot and we are consuming a lot of beer. Without caravans we cannot produce hops beer. If it wasn't for the Count's caravan that brought many barrels of beer, the castle wouldn't even have enough sour beer now. Gort said with a bitter face, I think we should build a dock and go directly to Viscount Trick's house to buy hops. Unfortunately, the east coast of Flower Town was a flat beach, and there was no deep water port to build a dock. As for Viscount Trick, he was a follower of the Earl of Coral Island. His full name was Trick Wildgrass, and he owned a small island called Beer Island. There was a magnificent castle on the island, Beer Castle. With the help of the hops, the beer of the Blackgrass family sold well on many large islands. Beer was the most common type of beverage in the Grand Duchy. It was divided into two types, beer with hops and beer without hops. Hops are a type of hops, which play a huge role in beer, giving it a refreshing aroma, bitterness and preservative power, forming a fine foam, helping to clarify the wort, and the intense hop flavor of the hops balances the natural sweetness of the wort and stimulates the appetite. Beer without hops would quickly become sour beer, making it difficult to swallow. The beer with hops on Coral Island was brewed by the Blackgrass family. It was because of this industry that the Blackgrass family had the money to build the named Beer Castle. The dock is out of the question. Therefore, I have to completely open up the road to the Thorns Ridge. Only in this way can the caravan enter Flower Town. Now, there are no revenue knight to protect the caravan. While speaking, List looked at Marcus. Teacher Marcus, has the selection of the knight squad not ended yet? Marcus put down the boiled peanuts in his hand and said, tomorrow is the final selection date. I already have a preliminary candidate. Unfortunately, their physical constitution is still too poor. Only 2 of them can meet the admission standards of the Knight College. Probably because they don't have enough to eat. Next, the Knight squad will be supported by the castle. I believe that their physical constitution will improve greatly. In that case, I will no longer worry about food and concentrate on training. Amichim, let them master Qi as soon as possible. The Flower Town should have more than 5 Knight with Qi. In the future, there will be a lot of things that will need to rely on the Knight Squad. Surprisingly, List saw the logging team the next day. He had thought that Gort would need at least 2 or 3 days to complete the transfer of able-bodied serfs. He had not expected that he would get an unexpected surprise today. Riding on horseback, Gort personally led the logging team to the main road outside the castle. There was a total of 30 able-bodied serfs, but only half of them had a new or old axe. The team had a total of 2 saws, which had been brought by the carpenter's son from home. Ironware was hard to find. Metals were in the hands of countries with dragons. It was very difficult to obtain them. This was also the reason why the Grand Duchy of Sapphire often organized orders of chivalry to go to the continent to participate in wars and seize minerals. The Grand Duchy's iron ore was basically seized from the Eagle Kingdom and transported bit by sea to the various islands. In the Flower Town, many serfs used wooden, stone, and bone tools as labor tools. It was different from the orderly and solemn scene he had imagined. The group of able-bodied serfs had deep uneasiness on their faces. The Lord had asked them to go to the Thorns Ridge to cut down trees. This was too dangerous. In case they encountered World of Warcraft, their wives might have to remarry. Teacher Gort, didn't you tell them that I would send people to protect them? Of course I did, but they are still trembling with fear. List expressed his understanding. Words are useless. While they were talking, a team of shouting slogans ran towards the castle from the horse field. There were 4 knights supervising them. The knight in the lead was Marcus. Sir. Marcus dismounted and saluted List. How come there are 30 people? They will guard the logging team. Through today's performance, I will make a final selection of the team members in my mind. Marcus explained, their physiques are about the same and they are not too stupid. Now it is time for the final choice, the test of courage. A knight cannot lack courage. Gort said, List, aren't you going to say something before we set off? List nodded. He naturally had to say something to keep up appearances. Riding on Black Dragon, his black World of Warcraft leather armor accentuated his heroic bearing. List slowly walked up to the 2 teams. With a solemn expression, List swept the team with a glance and said in a clear voice, Subjects, I am your lord List Tulip. After a pause, he suddenly didn't know what he should say. He still hadn't mastered the skill of putting on a show. After a moment, he decided to delete his long-winded provocative speech and just calmly said, Today, you will cut down trees in the Thorns Ridge for me and open up a path between the fief and the outside world. As for me, I will protect your safety. Words were useless. Facing the still restless serfs, List just lightly brandished his horsewhip. Black Dragon raised its front hooves and roared towards the sky. When the horse's hooves landed, List was already riding ahead. Chapter 62. Straighten out your chest, cheer up. Marcus's roar continued to resound in the woods at the edge of the Thorns Ridge. From time to time, the horsewhip in his hand would make crackling sounds. 30 teenagers holding wooden sticks nervously patrolled every corner of the woods. They could hear the cries of various birds and beasts in the depths of the woods, which might even contain the roars of World of Warcraft. For the teenagers who grew up listening to the terrifying rumors of World of Warcraft, staying here for another quarter of an hour would make them feel a chill on the back of their necks, as if World of Warcraft would open its mouth and choke them at any time. Tony was such a teenager who was on tenterhooks. He tightly grasped the wooden stick in his hand and leaned against a big tree, his legs slightly trembling. Last winter, a windblade wolf attacked Wheat Settlement and ate 2 serfs, scaring him into having nightmares for several nights in a row. Now he recalled that nightmare and couldn't help but pray in his heart. Please don't eat me. He kept looking at the adults outside who were chopping down trees, as if doing so would give him a sense of security. Suddenly, an explosion sounded above his head. Unknowingly, Marcus had arrived at his side on horseback and lashed the tree trunk with his whip, sending the bark flying. Tony, I told you to keep an eye on the woods, not on the lumberjacks. Yes, Mr. Marcus. Show your manliness, don't let me down, and especially don't let Sir Lord down. Marcus said coldly. Tony hurriedly replied in a loud voice, Yes, I will not let Mr. Marcus down, and even more so, I will not let Sir Lord down. Only then did Marcus ride away. Upon seeing this, Tony heaved a long sigh of relief. He was very afraid of this cold-faced and ruthless Earth Knight. In the past few days of the selection, he had suffered a lot of whipping. It was a real whipping. With every lash, a bloody scar would immediately appear on his body. If it wasn't for becoming a retainer knight and obtaining the opportunity to change his fate, he wouldn't have been willing to face Marcus, and even more unwilling to come here to face World of Warcraft. What he didn't know was that Marcus shook his head and left. This Earth Knight had already rejected him. As a knight, if he could not face his inner fear and overcome the pressure exerted on him by the environment, then he had no potential. In his eyes, commoners could only become nobles through the baptism of blood and fire. If they were not prepared, it was better for them to go home early and focus on farming. Otherwise, he would die under the hooves of horses on the battlefield in the future. Traversing through the forest, Marcus not only monitored every movement in the forest, but also examined the youths. The morning passed peacefully, and he had basically decided on the candidates for the 12 team members. And said noon. He reported his choice to list: Sir Philip Wool, Xavier Cowdung, Jacob Footsole, York Baldy, Wayne Haystack, Zachary Littlefinger, York Shoemaker, Evan Handkerchief, Sean Redface, Tracy Hunchback, Myron Underpants, Theodore Rotten Socks. These 12 youths will become your retainer knight. Xavier Cowdung. He sounds like the younger brother of Jim Cowdung. York the bald guy and York the shoemaker. They have the same names. One of them is York and the other is York Jr. Then tell their families that from now on, these 12 teenagers will no longer work and will be supported by the castle. Yes. The night team had been selected. At noon, List took the time to summon the smoke quest. As expected, the quest was completed and updated. Quest completed. Reward: Wind Peregrine Falcon about to hatch. Mission: in addition to the floating bottles, there may also be unexpected surprises. Right now, there is a sailing ship carrying a surprise drifting towards the east coast. Please find and rescue the ship that has fallen into distress. Reward: a portion of the population. List didn't pay attention to the Wind Peregrine Falcon reward for the first time, because he saw the population. At present, what the flower town lacked the most was population. The small town had less than 2,000 people, which was not as many as the larger villages in his hometown. Without population as the lord, he could not carry out any plan. What he desired the most was population. The population reward is related to the shipwreck. So, a ship carrying people is about to drift to the east coast? Thinking of this, List impatiently called out to Gort. List, what can I do for you? It suddenly occurred to me that the oyster settlement's fishermen are facing the sea. There are a lot of sea monsters in the sea. This is very dangerous and must be taken seriously. Sea monsters shouldn't come to the shore, right? Gort was a bit disapproving. Sea monsters were indeed very dangerous and often attacked ships. However, sea monsters generally rarely came to the shore. Once the tide ebbed, they would be stranded, only death awaited them. List had an ulterior motive. He emphasized, do not be careless in the slightest danger. Immediately notify the patrol team to focus on patrolling the east coast. Report to me if there are any abnormalities. Hold on for a while. If there are really no sea monsters coming ashore, then adjust the focus of the patrol team. Alright, I will go notify them. After Gort left, List was in the mood to pay attention to the reward of the previous quest, the Wind Peregrine Falcon egg. He had heard of the Wind Peregrine Falcon. It was a falcon-type World of Warcraft, a low-level World of Warcraft. It often appeared on the seashore and fed on the fish in the sea. Because it was a small animal, it rarely attacked humans. Relatively speaking, it was relatively less dangerous. However, this did not mean that it was weak. On the contrary, it was very powerful. Could release magic, the Wind Blade. This magic was the same as the Windblade Wolf's magic. However, as a falcon-type animal, it had the natural advantage of flying. The Wind Blade could be shot from almost any direction. In other words, it could use kiting tactics to kill its opponent without any losses. Then, where is my Wind Peregrine Falcon? List looked at the tree that was being chopped down and became vigilant. Could it be hiding in one of the trees that is about to be chopped down? If there was really a Wind Peregrine Falcon, it would definitely be a huge threat. He quickly called for Marcus. We can't just pay attention to the ground beasts in the forest. We also have to pay attention to the sky. There might be flying World of Warcraft here. Marcus took down the bow on his back and held it in his hand. His eyes were firm. Sir, the flying World of Warcraft is more fragile than the ground World of Warcraft. My arrows are always ready for them. His confidence infected List. I originally wanted to learn archery from you, but I never had the time. Sir wants to learn, you can learn anytime. Yes, after this busy period, I will learn archery. List made a decision. Archery was a must. Long-range attacks were in line with his personality, killing enemies from 1,000 miles away. Close combat was too rough, and the probability of getting injured was high. As a lord, he came to this world to enjoy life and not to suffer. Chapter 63. It was a battle between monkeys and birds. Gort quickly described the scene in detail. In fact, it was a group of fruit-stealing monkeys attacking an eagle. That bird built a nest on a fragrant coconut tree and there seemed to be eggs in the nest. The fruit-stealing monkey stopped stealing fruits and instead stole eggs. He treated this as an anecdote. List mounted his horse and announced on the spot, "Today's logging work ends here. Everyone leave the Thorns Ridge. Teacher Marcus, come with me to the oyster settlement." Without a doubt, that bird was a winged peregrine falcon, and the one lying in its nest was a hatchling about to hatch. It was also his mission reward. Under the Lord's command, the logging team immediately stopped their work and returned to the town along the half-built gravel road. List had already taken Marcus and 4 retainer knight to the oyster settlement. When they arrived at the east coast, they saw the patrol team surrounding a fragrant coconut tree. There was a large pile of monkey corpses under the tree. "Sir Lord." The patrol team saluted one after another. List raised his head and looked at the canopy of the fragrant coconut tree. This tree was several tens of meters tall, with the lowest being as tall as a 4-story building and the highest being as tall as a 20-story building. The one in front of him was the tallest, growing at a 60-degree angle towards the sea. Looking up, the crown of the tree was almost like a small dot. At this time, the crown of the tree was very lively, with chickens flying and dogs jumping around chaotically. Occasionally, the corpse of a monkey would fall down and die on the spot. Even if it didn't fall to death, its body was riddled with scars as if it had been cut by a blade. There is World of Warcraft on it. It looks like a wound caused by a magic wind blade. Marcus vigilantly picked up the corpse of a fruit-stealing monkey. List casually pointed, "It's a winged peregrine falcon. This group of fruit-stealing monkeys is attacking the winged peregrine falcon's nest, and its eggs should be in the nest. The battle is very fierce. Teacher Marcus, do you have any way to get the eggs? It's likely to hatch into a new winged peregrine falcon." "So it's a winged peregrine falcon." Marcus nodded in understanding, but then he frowned and said, "It's easy to climb up a tree, but there's a group of fruit-stealing monkeys and a winged peregrine falcon, so it's very dangerous. World of Warcraft is the fiercest when it comes to protecting the nest, and the fruit-stealing monkeys themselves are also a group of fierce beasts. Then let's wait for a while. Perhaps they will both suffer." List said uncertainly. Since it was a mission reward, it shouldn't be hard to obtain. Otherwise, it would be impossible to obtain the bird egg from a group of fruit-stealing monkeys or a winged peregrine falcon. This wait lasted for another 15 minutes or so. There were more and more monkey corpses, and the patrol members were happily picking up the corpses. These were all first-rate game. Even though they couldn't eat them as everything in the territory belonged to the castle and List, the Lord would definitely reward them with some benefits. List thought for a while and told the patrol members, "Collect all the dead fruit-stealing monkeys, stab the heavily injured ones, and tie up the ones that aren't heavily injured. I want them alive." He didn't forget his previous idea of training the fruit-stealing monkeys to pick fragrant coconuts from trees. "Yes, Sir Lord." Marcus suddenly said, "Sir, be careful, the remaining monkeys are about to escape." As soon as his voice fell, List saw about a dozen fruit-stealing monkeys quickly escaping along the trunk of the fragrant coconut tree. Behind them, a large bird with almost all its feathers falling off was flapping its wings as it chased after them. "Marcus, follow me to intercept the winged peregrine falcon. Everyone in the patrol team, intercept the fruit-stealing monkeys, don't let a single one escape. Capture them alive if you can. The sandpiper and the clam fight and the fisherman benefits." With such a good opportunity, List made a prompt decision. Yes. Faced with the opportunity to beat the drowning dogs, the patrol members were quite excited. They each took out their weapons and blocked the tree. Marcus took out his bow, nocked an arrow and was ready to shoot at any time. List himself took out the red blood sword that he carried with him. The gemstone weapon made him very confident. In the blink of an eye, the remaining fruit-stealing monkeys had already jumped down the tree, and the patrol members howled as they rushed forward to attack them. The fruit-stealing monkeys were already exhausted after fighting for a while, and had no way to counterattack. They were like headless flies that didn't know where to run, and could only take the beating. The spear hit the monkey's body, and after a few hits, it was lying on the ground, unable to move. On the other side, the winged peregrine falcon was chasing a fruit-stealing monkey. Caught off guard, List had already rushed over on horseback. The red blood sword was covered in raging flames, and he used the ultimate profound skill, prairie blazing fire slash. A large amount of fire rained down, and even though the winged peregrine falcon was very agile in dodging, it was still hit by the rain of fire, and its remaining feathers were ignited. But after this attack, the winged peregrine falcon sensed danger, and with a long cry, it flapped its wings and flew towards the sky. List couldn't let it escape and he roared, "Marcus!" Marcus was already prepared and released the bowstring. 2 arrows flew side by side, and accompanied by a short, sharp whistling sound, they fiercely pierced the winged peregrine falcon's body. The arrowhead disappeared and blood splattered in the sky. The winged peregrine falcon swayed and then fell on the beach. When the last fruit-stealing monkey was smashed to the ground by the spear, the patrol members swarmed over and captured it on the spot. In the end, there was no winner in this battle between the monkeys and the birds, and it was all taken by List as a fisherman. After taking inventory, there were a total of 46 fruit-stealing monkeys, 39 of them were dead or seriously injured, and the remaining 7 were not seriously injured and were tied up. The winged peregrine falcon's corpse was picked up. It was not big and was only the size of a dog. A patrol member with nimble hands and feet carefully climbed up the crown of the fragrant coconut tree, found the bird's nest, and took out a bird egg that was slightly smaller than a pineapple. "Sir Lord, there really is a bird egg." The patrol member excitedly offered the bird egg to List. List reached out and took the bird egg, but before he could start admiring it, the bird egg suddenly issued a slight cracking sound. "Sir, the bird egg hatched." Marcus stared blankly for a moment. List also stared blankly for a moment. He inwardly thought, "The smoke mission is really amazing. I just touched it and the bird egg has already hatched." While he was in a daze, the cracking sound of the bird egg rang out incessantly. A moment later, the shell was pecked open, and an ugly bald bird's head emerged. It opened its mouth and issued unpleasant jg sounds. The huge eyes on the bird's head looked at List, and it kept calling out as if asking for food. List lightly coughed. "Teacher Marcus, what do the winged peregrine falcon chicks eat?" "It should be small fish and shrimps." "Then, patrol members, go to the oyster settlement's fishermen's houses and get some small fish and shrimps. Remember, they have to be alive." He vaguely remembered that in Man and Nature he had read, there were seabirds feeding their chicks, and in their beaks, there were still small fish that were moving around. It was obvious that they were alive. However, he also seemed to remember that some birds ate the small fish and shrimps into their stomachs, and then brought them back to spit them out for the chicks to eat. In short, he had to feed some living things first. Today's harvest was already huge, so he didn't really care about the bird in World of Warcraft. The fruit-stealing monkeys had been dealt with, and the fragrant coconut tree could be picked as much as he wanted. There were even fruit pickers. The large winged peregrine falcon's corpse was also a rich nalda. Whether it was sold or eaten, it was a great supplement. There was also the mission that was about to be completed, which would reward the town with its scarce population. Chapter 64. GG. From time to time, unpleasant bird cries could be heard coming from the castle's study. The winged peregrine falcon hatchling was quite ugly. Its whole body was covered with fine invisible fluff, which curled up and stuck to its skin. It looked like a plucked chicken. Compared to the streamlined adult winged peregrine falcon flying in the sky, it was worlds apart. List, however, liked it very much. After all, it was a flying World of Warcraft. There was already a flying dust dog in the castle. From time to time he would take it out for a walk and place a few rock thorns on it, which was very pleasing to the eye. If there was another winged peregrine falcon, it could summon a wind blade from time to time, which would definitely be very eye-catching. Unfortunately, falcons did not recognize their master. List still had no idea how to tame it. He could only feed it first. However, he already had the castle's made sew a pair of leather gloves. He had seen a video of playing with falcons before. In the video, the players wore leather gloves and let the falcons land on them. There seemed to be a small toy. By throwing the toy, it would attract the falcons to pounce on it, and then taking the toy back, the falcons would only hover nearby and not fly away. When I have time, I should study this toy. It would be best to go to Coral City and ask around if there are any hunters who raise birds and how they tame them. At the banquet, they ate roasted fruit-stealing monkey meat. It was not as delicate as roast beef. It was a bit dry and not easy to bite. However, it was unknown if it was because they often ate fragrant coconuts. After the monkey meat was roasted, there was a faint coconut juice fragrance. This unique taste was different from ordinary roasted meat. It was very popular at the banquet. If the fruit-stealing monkey meat could be made a little more delicate, it would definitely be a famous dish. I suggest that the town raise them in large numbers. Gort ate until his mouth was covered in oil. List was much more refined. Because he did not choose to eat the roasted fruit-stealing monkey meat, he just watched others eat heartily. Raising them in large numbers is a good thing, I also decided to do so. However, eating meat is not a good idea. Monkeys have high IQ, they should be trained to pick fruits from trees and work for fruit farmers. According to the theory of his hometown, humans and monkeys had a common ancestor, they were both primates. There was no such concept in this world. Humans were humans and there was no such thing as evolution. Apart from dragons and elves, all other creatures were inferior to humans. In fact, in many people's eyes, dragons and elves were just slightly more magical creatures that could not be compared to humans. Eating dragons, eating spirits, and even humans eating humans, wasn't unheard of. Therefore, even if he didn't eat, he wouldn't stop others from eating. Isaiah asked curiously, "Sir, can the monkeys really be trained to help the fruit farmers?" Of course. It's just like training dogs and horses. The reason why List was so sure was because he had seen a lot of monkey shows. He had also seen a piece of news in Malaysia or Thailand where the locals would train monkeys to climb trees to pluck coconuts. There was a fruit farmer who mistreated his monkey. In the end, the monkey got angry and smashed the farmer to death with wild fruits. Now the fruit-stealing monkeys belonged to List. After they were trained and given to the fruit farmers, no one would dare to mistreat them. It probably wouldn't kill the owner. If the fruit-stealing monkeys were really trained, it would certainly be an interesting situation. I never thought that monkeys could work for us. Blair laughed as if he could already see the scene of monkeys picking fruits. List smiled and said, "In that case, I'll leave the task of training the fruit-stealing monkeys to you, Blair." "All right, I think I'm competent." At this time, Marcus suddenly said, "Sir, how do we deal with the Wind Peregrine Falcon's corpse? Do you need me to go to Coral City and sell it?" The Wind Peregrine Falcon was a low-level World of Warcraft. Selling it for 10 gold coins wouldn't be a problem. If it was before, List would certainly sell it for money to buy daily necessities. But now the thief didn't lack money. The income from the Black Tulip was enough to support his aristocratic lifestyle for decades. The rich and overbearing List said on the spot, "No need to buy it, let's dry the meat first. When are we going to hold a Wind Peregrine Falcon barbecue party? As for the other parts, does Teacher Marcus have any suggestions on how to use them?" Bird bones are hollow, especially the bones of the Wind Peregrine Falcon, which have wind-attributed magic power. The articulated bones can be made into bone whistles, which are very loud. The larger bones can be made into tools, which are light and sturdy, and are more useful than ironware. In addition, its feathers are excellent materials for making arrows. Marcus quickly planned out the use of the Wind Peregrine Falcon's materials. "Sir's about to learn archery and will need a batch of arrows." List asked, "Is there anyone in the fief who can make arrows?" Marcus immediately replied, I make my own arrows." "Thank you, Teacher Marcus." List picked up a glass filled with hops beer. "This glass is a tribute to you. Thanks to the 2 arrows in the afternoon, the Wind Peregrine Falcon stayed. Otherwise it would have been a huge disaster." "I am willing to serve, sir." Marcus happily raised the beer without hops and drank it in one gulp. The bonfire was extinguished and the sky was filled with stars. Gort, Marcus and the rest had already returned. The servants were busy cleaning up the mess left behind by the banquet. List was carrying the milk tea that housekeeper Carter brought over. He was used to drinking a cup of milk tea before going to bed. The rich nutrition of milk was what his body urgently needed. 16 years old, the age of growth. "Master, the bath water has been prepared for you. How is the Wind Peregrine Falcon chick?" "It is still calling out with all its might, but I have already fed it a lot of small fish and prawns. It is definitely not hungry. But master, this little bird is really ugly." "I agree with you." "Then go and take a look at this little fellow. If it is going to cry for the whole night, then take it out. I don't want to be woken up in the middle of the night." List passed the empty glass to Carter and walked towards the castle. When he met a servant who was working, the servant would stop and bow to him. This feeling was very good. He was getting more and more used to his identity as an aristocrat. His head and butt were tilted to the side of the aristocracy. Whoever dared to shake the foundation of the aristocracy was going against him. List. "Good night, ladies and gentlemen." Revealing an impeccable aristocratic smile, List opened his mouth and said, "I hope that all of you can have a good dream until dawn." "Thank you, master." Immediately, List had already gone to the second floor, which was his exclusive room. Carter pushed open the door of the study. The room that was quiet just now was immediately filled with unpleasant bird cries. Kaji, kaji, kaji. No matter how many times I hear it, it still sounds unpleasant. List looked at the ugly curly-haired bird in a small nest that was simply padded with hay. Mr. Carter, what do you think it should be called? Outside the castle, there is a shivering docen that was found in the forest. Perhaps this shivering little bird found on the fragrant coconut tree can be called Shakily Coconut? Although Carter misunderstood the meaning of docen, List still laughed. Mr. Carter, you are getting more and more humorous. But I don't like the name Shakily Coconut. It looks curly. I hope it has the luck to live until the day it can fly. Let's call it Blessed Curls. Chapter 65. Early the next morning, List took Blessed Curl's nest and hung it on the castle's windowsill. On one hand he wanted to let it bask in the sun, and on the other hand he was fed up with the bird's cries. He didn't know what happened last night, but it actually cried in the middle of the night. At this time, Blessed Curls had just eaten small fish and shrimps, so it was full of energy. It crawled around in the nest, constantly making quack sounds. In the kennel outside the castle, Docen poked its head out and stared at Blessed Curls on the windowsill, drooling. Woof woof. Seeing List go out, it immediately wagged its tail cheerfully, rattling the iron chain around its neck. List really was raising a dog. He had been using a dog chain since childhood. List untied the chain and held it in his hand. Docen immediately spread its hooves and madly ran. The time when List took it for a walk every day was probably the happiest time of the day. Leading Docen to the horse field, List began to train. When Docen was small, he usually trained once a day, but now it had been reduced to once every 3 days. He successfully taught Docen not to hurt people or release magic without a password. At the same time, it was not allowed to casually eat and drive the horses on the horse field. Of course, apart from Black Dragon, other horses would make a detour when they saw Docen. Sit down, Docen. Docen, who was running happily a moment ago, immediately crouched down and looked at List with its tongue out, not much different from a native dog. List threw a small ball made of leather. Pick it up, Docen. Docen immediately shot out like an arrow. After a few steps, it jumped, turned 180 degrees in the air, and smoothly caught the ball with its mouth. Then it shot back and placed it in List's hand. Very good. He rewarded Docen with a small piece of jerky. Next, he repeatedly trained several things, including releasing magic rockthorns. Only when Docen was exhausted and out of breath did List tie up the chain again and give it to Thomas. Take it back. Yes, master. Looking at the position of the sun, List felt that the logging team should have arrived today. However, it was not the logging team that had rushed over. Instead, it was a patrol member. Lord, urgent report. Speak. A tilted sail ship is drifting on the east coast. Someone is waving a flag on the ship. Sir Gort thinks that it's a ship that's in distress. He's organizing people to prepare for a rescue. He asked me to immediately come and report to you, my lord. Hearing the news, List's spirit was lifted, and he immediately said to the patrol member, I'll rush over now. Tell Gort that he must rescue the wrecked ship, especially the people on board. By the time List finished changing into Frack Abier, who had gone out, he led the 4 Retainer Knight and the Earth Knight Marcus to the east coast. He saw a group of people pulling on ropes by the sea, dragging a ship that wasn't too big but wasn't too small either. Among the people pulling the ropes, there were a few unfamiliar faces. Sir Lord Isaiah, who was in charge of pulling the ship, bowed in salute. Gort also hurried over from the sea. List, these are refugees from the Small Kerchief Island. They escaped from the Small Kerchief Island by ship, intending to seek refuge in the Big Kerchief Island. However, they encountered a storm and their ship was damaged. They could only drift along with the sea breeze to the Coral Island and get stranded on the east coast. List nodded. He had heard of the Small Kerchief Island and the Big Kerchief Island. At this moment, a somewhat hunchbacked old man walked over to him and knelt in salute from a distance. Respected Sir Baron of the Flower Town, I, the one in distress, Bernal Mosquito, offer you my sincere greetings and express my deepest apologies for disturbing the noble Sir. Mosquito? List had heard of many strange surnames, yet he still felt that the name Mosquito was very strange. Sir, my family has been collecting sea otter's eggs for Sir Lord Small Kerchief Island for generations. The agricultural harvest was difficult to guarantee, food was scarce in many places, and the fear and ignorance of the sea had led to the fishing industry being practically non-existent. At the same time, the serfs were forced to find ways to obtain food in order to ensure the luxurious lifestyle of the aristocrats in the castle. Among them, sea otters' eggs had become a source of food. Sea otters were gull-type seabirds, and their nests were generally built on seaside cliffs. To collect sea otters' eggs, one had to risk their lives by climbing 100-meter-tall cliffs and fighting against the sea otters protecting the eggs. It could be said that it was not easy for the serfs to survive and leave behind descendants. Understood. List extended his hand and motioned for Burnell to get up. Why did you escape from the small Kerchief Island? The small Kerchief Island was attacked by a group of pirates, the castle fell, and Sir Lord Small Kerchief's fate was unknown. We had to seize the pirate's ship and escape from the small Kerchief Island. Originally we were going to take refuge in the big Kerchief Island, but we encountered a fierce storm and the ship nearly capsized. We ended up in Sir's territory. List unconsciously frowned. The small Kerchief Island was attacked by pirates. The small Kerchief Island was the territory of Viscount Small Kerchief's family. If he remembered correctly, the current lord was called Vincent Small Kerchief. 100 years ago, this family and the Big Kerchief Island's Viscount Nar Big Kerchief belonged to the same family, the Kerchief family. The handkerchiefs sewn by this family were very famous. Later on, one branch inherited the family title, while the other made meritorious deeds on the battlefield and became viscounts. Thereupon, one branch changed their surname to Big Kerchief and the other to Small Kerchief. The pirates looted the castle and massacred the people on the island. We could only flee. What do you decide to do now? List looked at the damaged sailboat. The sail had been torn and the hull had several holes. At this time, the ship had already been pulled ashore and a group of stooped people helped each other disembark. Do you continue to take refuge in the Big Kerchief Island or stay in the Flower Town? Burnell's turbid eyes suddenly flashed with a ray of hope. Sir, can we stay in the Flower Town? List naturally wouldn't let this opportunity slip by. If you stay, I can grant you the status of serfs. There are many wastelands in the Flower Town that can be granted to you for farming. Serfs who are skilled in a trade can be put in an important position. Report to Sir Gort whether you want to stay or leave. The ship was damaged and stranded. They simply couldn't leave. Besides, what was the difference between going to the Big Kerchief Island and staying in the Flower Town? Therefore, after a simple discussion with the other refugees, Burnell reported to Gort that they would all stay and become Flower Town's serfs, pledging their loyalty to List. Since they had become serfs, it meant that these people, including the broken ship, were List's assets. Teacher Gort, take inventory of the newly joined serfs and then add them to the various settlements. In addition, the sailboat also has to be cleaned up. I want to know what is inside the ship. The ship seized from the pirates must have some weapons, right? Gort's attitude was positive. Please rest assured, List. These serfs cannot hide even a piece of bread from you. Everything they carry, as well as everything about each of them, will be clearly presented to you. It will only take half a day. Don't forget about the ship. If it can be repaired, then repair it. Chapter 66. Banquets. It seemed that banquets were being held in the castle every day. For aristocrats, eating and drinking was a normal life. The small Kerchief Island has encountered pirates. Teacher Marcus, are pirates very popular in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire? List asked as he ate the barbecue. Marcus pondered for a moment before replying. Just from the information about pirates, many small islands have been baptized by pirates. However, there may be another reason. What reason? These pirates are most likely in disguise. Not every aristocratic family can manage a rich estate. When they are on the verge of bankruptcy, taking risks out of desperation will become a shortcut for them to redeem themselves. Especially between aristocrats who have enmity with each other, they will even use the identity of pirates to loot each other's wealth. Hearing this gory information, if it was the 16-year-old youngster of his predecessor, it was very likely that he would be unwilling to accept it. It was inconceivable that an aristocrat who boasted of his noble bloodline and possessed countless qualities would actually moonlight as a pirate. However, the current List only frowned slightly before quickly relaxing his brows. Fortunately, the Coral Island has the powerful orders of chivalry. For the time being, the Flower Town is not in danger of pirates. However, we have to be vigilant in times of peace. Teacher Marcus, the Knight Squad must be trained well. Please rest assured, sir. I will go all out to train the Knight Squad and turn every one of them into a qualified knight on the battlefield. List then asked Gort, Teacher Gort, give me the information about the new serfs now. I feel that it is best to talk about official business while eating. If you like, then let's talk now. Gort motioned for a servant to bring his coat. He then took out a thick bast paper from his pocket and opened it. There are a total of 50 serfs. In fact, they were originally freedmen. Therefore, after the pirates attacked, they wisely chose to escape. The small kerchief island had a small kerchief city. The 50 people were the citizens of the city and had their own industries. The relationship between freedmen and lords was more like that between tenants and landlords, while serfs were slaves. For the nobles, the serfs were their own people, while the freedmen were outsiders. In the event of a war between lords, the lords would choose to protect their serfs, who were their wealth. However, there was no such protection for free people. They deserved to die, and the lord could also earn some extra income. Thus, there were advantages and disadvantages to being a free citizen. Not everyone wanted to be a free citizen. Seeing that Viscount Smallkerchief was defeated and that they would be killed and robbed by the pirates at any time, some of the freedmen of Smallkerchief City hurriedly fled. They cleverly chose to seize a ship. While the pirates were still fighting in the castle, they seized a sailboat. Unfortunately, they only had a captain who knew how to steer the ship, but not a skilled crew. In the end, they lost control in the storm. That's why none of them know how to farm. They're all free citizens with skills. Liszt was very satisfied with this. For the development of the territory, craftsmen were more important than simple farmers. In the future, farmers could sell as many slaves as they wanted, but craftsmen were very difficult to get. Blacksmiths, cooper makers, embroidery workers, tailors, bakers, winemakers, shoeshine workers, carpenters, dyers, soap makers, tanners, sugar workers, salt workers, locksmiths, cooks and their families. Oh, there are also innkeepers and horse dealers as well as several street peddlers. What is Burnell's profession? Liszt recalled the old man who spoke to him during the day. He is a soap maker who can make all kinds of fragrant soaps with the scent of flowers. Very well, I've had enough of using honey locust powder to take a bath. It would be best to have him quickly make the honey locust powder into fragrant soap. As a person who loved cleanliness and had to take a bath every day, Liszt had a huge demand for fragrant soap. Unfortunately, the castle did not have that much fragrant soap, only some honey locust powder, which was the powder ground from the fruit of the honey locust tree. Honey locust powder could indeed be used to wash clean, but it was very troublesome and it didn't feel good when washing. In fact, Liszt knew of a more concise cleaning product, pancreas. It was a kind of soap made from a mixture of pig pancreas and plant ashes. It was very simple to make, just mash the pig pancreas and plant ashes and stir them together to make the simplest pancreas. Unfortunately, there was no one in the flower town to feed pigs. He cut a piece of roast meat, forked it, and dipped it in ketchup. The roast meat with ketchup tasted good. After swallowing it, he drank a mouthful of seafood soup, and then wiped his mouth with a napkin. Mr. Carter and Teacher Gort will discuss the work arrangements for the new serfs. The right ones can be arranged to go to the town and help them set up shops specifically for the castle's manufacturing needs. There were too few residents in the town and obviously, there was not much demand. As the lord, he had to enjoy all of it. Only in this way could these craftsmen play a role in a short period of time. Carter bowed and said, "Yes, master, I will consult Mr. Gort." After talking about the matter of the new serfs, Liszt talked about another official business. The logging team's work efficiency still needs to be improved. However, a new problem has arisen. There will often be other things that will lead me and Teacher Marcus away. At that time, the logging team's defensive power will be useless, which is very dangerous. However, we really cannot find any more power to defend the Thorns Ridge's World of Warcraft. Therefore, I think that there is a need for a way for the logging team to have the power to protect themselves even if they encounter the World of Warcraft. Liszt said faintly. No one answered immediately. They were all thinking. Liszt was not in a hurry as he continued to eat his dinner. In fact, he was testing the several people present. He already had an idea which was very likely to be able to deal with the World of Warcraft. This method originated from the smoke mission. After the rescue in the morning, he had completed the mission. Mission completed. Reward 50 people. Mission: dangers may occur in the depths of the Thorns Ridge at any time. The logging team is in a precarious situation. As a lord who owns a piece of smoke grass, you should reasonably use the resources to protect the safety of your subjects. Please resist the invasion of the World of Warcraft. Reward: super small mineral deposit. The mission prompt was very clear. Smoke grass could be used to resist the World of Warcraft. Liszt had a very deep impression of the smell of smoke grass. World of Warcraft might not be able to withstand it, especially since some World of Warcraft characters had very sensitive noses. Therefore, he planned to use smoke grass to make simple World of Warcraft mosquito repellent incense, and ignite it whenever he encountered a World of Warcraft. He was determined to obtain this super small mineral deposit. However, he didn't directly state his plan. Instead, he hoped that someone could come up with this method. Otherwise, he would feel like he was raising a bunch of freeloaders. After a while, no one came up with a good idea. Chapter 67. Were wild beasts afraid of fire? This was quite an interesting question. Gort shook his head and put forward a different opinion. Not all wild beasts are afraid of fire. Some wild beasts are even curious about fire, let alone the fire-attributed World of Warcraft, which is naturally close to fire sources. Marcus pondered, I think that this method is not necessarily impossible. Wild beasts would naturally not be afraid of a small fire, but I believe that even the fire-attributed World of Warcraft would not want to get close to a big fire. The pine tree branches cut by the logging team are not of great value. What we want are the trunks. The discussion revolved around making a fire for a quarter of an hour. Soon after, Blair added, we can let the fief's hunters participate in cutting down trees and have them set up traps in the surroundings. It might not work against World of Warcraft, but it would at least serve as an early warning. Coupled with a bonfire, I believe that it would be enough to ensure the safety of the logging team's serfs. Finally, List made the decision. Bonfire, traps, these are measures worth trying. However, do not ignore a certain crop in the flower town. What crop? Everyone was curious. Smoke grass. Smoke grass? Oh heavens, how could I have forgotten about this terrible grass? Gort immediately gesticulated in an exaggerated manner. I am absolutely convinced that as long as a bit of smoke grass is lit, even a dragon would run away from it. That smell. List, the smell of smoke grass burning on the dairy farm is still fresh in my memory. Dragons would not run away from the smell, on the contrary they would be attracted. List narrowed his eyes slightly. He looked at Gort's expression and was convinced that the other party had just unconsciously mentioned this matter and was not inquiring about the details. On the day of the invisible dragon's invasion, the burning of the smoke grass, the death of the dairy farm's cows, the destroyed beacon tower, and the resounding and sharp dragon roar were all puzzling to others. However, List had said not to inquire about it. Therefore, they could only suppress these doubts at the bottom of their hearts until they were forgotten. I'm also convinced of this. When researching the smoke grass, I smeared a bit of smoke grass juice on the nose of the Cyan rabbit. The Cyan rabbit suffered for 2 days and almost fell ill. Isaiah nodded in agreement. The Cyan rabbit was his mount, a Cyan horse. So, List put down his knife and fork, wiped his mouth and stopped eating. Fire, traps and smoke grass. These 3 measures protect the logging team and ensure that World of Warcraft doesn't harm anyone. Mr. Gort and Mr. Marcus, please cooperate with each other to ensure that nothing goes wrong. Yes, my lord. Marcus accepted the order. Gort nodded quickly. Leave it to me, List. List added, in addition, we've finally found the value of the smoke grass, so I've decided to cultivate the smoke grass to the north of the flower farm and expand the scale of the cultivation of the smoke grass. Teacher Gort, you need to come up with a plan and implement it as soon as possible. Maybe we haven't cultivated enough wasteland. Gort said hesitantly, there is a serious shortage of serfs. There weren't many serfs to begin with. The oyster settlement, the logging team, the road repair team, the fief's shop apprentices, and even the night squad and the castle's servants have all transferred a lot of serfs. He extended his hand and counted with his fingers, corn grass, cornfields, tulip, and the large number of seeds you traded, such as beets, turnips, onions, coriander, and so on, all need to be planted by serfs. I think we need to replenish at least 1,000 serfs. Without any farming tools, the method to cultivate wasteland was slash and burn cultivation. Farming was a very energy-consuming job. A lot of serfs were needed to maintain the normal growth of crops and vegetables. Without enough serfs, the fields could not be planted. If it were mechanized, then a dozen or so people would be able to plant all the fields in the flower town. List often fantasized about leading the flower town into the farming mode of American farmers, with large machinery driving through the boundless farmland. However, it could only be a fantasy. Currently, the flower town did not even have a few shovels and hoes. Therefore, he did not force Gort to quickly expand the plantation. Then first come up with a plan, divide the fields, and wait for sufficient manpower before starting the planting. As you wish. At the logging site, more than 30 loggers were in groups of 2, chopping down trees with axes. It had to be said that the serfs, who worked hard all year round, had great strength and good efficiency. Riding on Black Dragon, List slowly patrolled. On the other side, Marcus was leading the night squad, constantly picking up the chopped pine branches and dragging them to the 3 bonfires in the woods. The bonfires burned fiercely, forming a triangular shape to protect the logging site. Hunters were making traps around the bonfires. Occasionally, the cries of birds could be heard from the depths of the woods. There was no dangerous atmosphere, only a scene of bustling activity. However, List did not relax in the slightest. The smoke mission's prompt was very clear: there would be a World of Warcraft attack on the logging site. It was just that he did not know when the attack would occur. World of Warcraft, huh? Since coming to the Flower Town, I have already killed 2. One was a flying dust dog that had just given birth and had yet to recover its strength, and the other was a winged peregrine falcon that was exhausted from fighting the fruit-stealing monkeys. However, there was no fierce battle between them. The only Windblade wolf that had a direct confrontation with the World of Warcraft was just a feint before fleeing into the Thorns Ridge. He was now somewhat looking forward to the upcoming World of Warcraft attack. This time he did not know what kind of World of Warcraft he would encounter, whether there would be a battle, and whether he could kill another World of Warcraft. The taste of World of Warcraft meat was much better than that of ordinary beasts, and it was also nourished by magic power. List loved it. The sun shone fiercely. There was no wind. Even under the shade of the trees it did not feel very cool. Fire-attributed chi circulated in his meridians. His hand rested on the hilt of the red blood sword and his gaze passed over the mottled shadows on the ground. He felt his fighting spirit boiling. With his personal style, it would be very difficult for him to perform a knight's charge on the battlefield. If he wanted to display the heroic bearing of an aristocrat, he could probably only do so in World of Warcraft. With so many people around, ample preparation, and Marcus assisting him, wasn't this the best opportunity to show off? Hurry up and come to World of Warcraft, my long sword is already thirsty. Whoosh. He suddenly unsheathed half of the red blood sword. He wanted to pull it out and play with it, but he felt that it was not serious enough and was about to put it back. But at this moment, through the crackling sound of burning pine branches, a slightly abrupt bang came from afar, quickly attracting his attention. Marcus, who was also patrolling the surroundings, apparently also noticed the movement and shouted, "Alert!" He drew his handgun and approached the source of the sound. List tightly grasped the hilt of the red blood sword. The sapphire blue pupils in his eyes rotated like a whirlpool. He had already cast magic eyes. Soon he saw faint traces of magic power in several bushes. After a slight identification, he recognized a total of 3 World of Warcraft. Chapter 68. Marcus could deal with a low-level World of Warcraft and find an opportunity to kill it. But if he blindly charged forward with 3, he would only be dismembered. Marcus didn't have time to think about how List knew there were 3 World of Warcraft and immediately reined in his horse to return. At the same time he quickly inserted his spear back into the spear rack on his horse's back, took out his bow and arrows, knocked them and shot 4 arrows in a row towards the bushes 50 meters away. The arrows all missed, but their effect was already apparent. Suddenly, a windblade wolf jumped out from a thicket and stared at Marcus with a gloomy gaze. It didn't easily attack, but just coldly looked at the logging team serfs as they drew closer to the bonfire. Carl and the other retainer knight took out the dried smoke grass leaves distributed to them and were ready to throw them into the bonfire at any time. The smoke grass leaves would emit a strong stench and scare away the World of Warcraft. List rode Black Dragon and joined up with Marcus, confronting the gray windblade wolf. "Sir, are you sure there are 3 World of Warcraft?" "I'm sure." List held the red blood sword, still not dispelling magic eyes. "There is one in the bushes to the left of this windblade wolf, and another one in the bushes to the right rear. It obviously wants to attract our attention and let the other 2 attack." Marcus once again knocked an arrow. "Wolves are cunning and cautious by nature, I'll force them out first." 2 arrows were shot, but there was no movement from the bushes. The situation should have been tense, but List suddenly wanted to laugh. These 3 windblade wolves were playing tricks with him. They thought they wouldn't be discovered if they hid in the bushes, but under the gaze of magic eyes, they simply had nowhere to hide. The one on the left, move 1 meter to the bottom left of the bushes. The one on the right rear, move 1.5 meters to the right. Marcus heard this. He once again pulled out an arrow. This time it wasn't a double arrow but a single arrow. He went straight to the bushes on the left. Puchi. Whoa. The sound of flesh being torn apart was accompanied by the miserable cry of the windblade wolf. The shrubbery shook, and the windblade wolf, with an arrow stuck in its shoulder blade, fled with its tail between its legs. Very quickly, it escaped into the depths of the forest. On the other side, the Windblade wolf that had attracted their attention also turned around and ran. Only the Windblade wolves in the bushes to the right were still hiding, possibly wanting to launch a sneak attack. However, in the next moment, a sharp arrow grazed its back and flew away, giving it a fright. It no longer dared to hide and scuttled out of the bushes. Without a sound, it turned around and fled. In just a few short exchanges of arrows, the 3 Windblade wolves had already disappeared without a trace, without even using the smoke grass. The mana I could no longer see any traces of magic. List summoned the smoke quest. Seeing that the content had been updated, he waved his hand with slight regret. The Windblade wolves have completely escaped. Remove the alert and continue logging. Not a single World of Warcraft was left behind, nor was he able to display his elegance. However, it was good that the mission was completed. Mission completed. Reward, a small saltpeter mine. Is it a saltpeter mine? Metals and gems came from dragons. As for the other minerals, they were produced by the continent itself. Previously, List had complained that without saltpeter, ice could not be made, and that he could not even drink a mouthful of cold beer in the middle of summer. List had not expected that the reward would be a saltpeter mine. How considerate. However, isn't it too wasteful to use saltpeter to make ice? I remember that saltpeter is one of the formulas for gunpowder. He recalled the formula for gunpowder he learned in middle school physics: charcoal, sulfur, and potassium nitrate, saltpeter. Now that he had a source of saltpeter, unfortunately he did not have a source of sulfur. Let's first use it to make ice. The weather is getting hotter and hotter. Without ice to cool down the temperature and cold beer, it is simply unbearable. List's thoughts revolved, and the smoke serpentines changed. Mission: the crisis of World of Warcraft's invasion has been resolved. It is time to go all out to cut down wood, widen the roads of the Thorns Ridge, bring the Flower Town back into the Coral Islands trade, and win opportunities for development. Reward: a new variety of mushrooms. A new variety of mushrooms? List immediately thought of the Shiitake settlement. Is the Shiitake settlement's shiitake shed going to grow a magic ingredient, just like the black tulip? Shiitake was a very important ingredient in aristocratic recipes. It was classified as a mushroom, and the people of this world called mushrooms abandoned sprite worms, meaning that they were plants abandoned by sprite worms, because they could not give birth to sprite worms. In this world, even a wheat could give birth to a sprite worm. Only a mushroom could not give birth to a sprite worm. Therefore, it was very doubtful whether it was a plant or not. However, it had many kinds of magic ingredients, and only plants could give birth to magic ingredients. From this, it could be seen that it was a plant. In the end, there was no definite conclusion. List's knowledge told him that a mushroom was a kind of fungus. However, in this world it was meaningless to know whether it was a fungus or a plant. This was not a world of science. Although it cannot give birth to sprite worms and cannot increase its output through supernatural forces, but as a mushroom, as long as the conditions are right, it can grow very quickly. If I can really get a new variety of magic ingredient mushrooms, then it would definitely be great news. It would be equivalent to the Flower Town having another specialty. The black tulip could originally be regarded as a specialty. However, he only had one tulip worm and could not expand the scale. Therefore, it was best to cooperate with the tulip castle. Magic ingredient mushrooms, on the other hand, did not need the help of sprite worms and could expand the scale of cultivation by itself. They were definitely an excellent specialty. Magic ingredient mushrooms alone might be able to attract an endless stream of caravans. At the very least, Levis and Li Weiwei would not miss out on a new magic ingredient. For the sake of the Sky Knight's dream, they were determined to make a medicine jar. Cut down trees. During this period of time, I will come every day to supervise the cutting of trees. The road to the Thorns Ridge must be cleared by this morning. List made a decision excitedly. It was a scorching summer and the heat was unbearable. List had originally planned to return to the castle ahead of time. Now that he was in high spirits, he had Thomas go to the castle to pack some food and have a picnic at the logging site. This was also to guard against the Windblade wolves returning. The picnic had just been eaten. Suddenly, the sound of hooves came from the road not far away. Several knights were whistling as they galloped. Seemingly having seen the logging team, the knights went straight to the logging site. Karl's 4 retainer knights immediately went to greet them. Then, together with the knights, they arrived before List. Sir Baron. The knight in the lead was an acquaintance of List, Lord Loudon's knight. He was a captain of the Knights of the Tulip Castle. He saluted in a knight's salute. Loudon sends his regards. The last time Levis and the others came for the assimilation transaction, it was this Lord Loudon's night. List returned the knight's salute. Sir Loudon, we meet again. What is the purpose of your visit this time? Chapter 69. Out of the Sea Festival. If not for List, he would have forgotten about it. The two most important festivals of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire were the New Year Festival and the Departure to the Sea Festival. The New Year Festival was a custom of the continent. It celebrated the end of one year and the beginning of a new one. Basically, all the nobles and commoners of any country would celebrate the New Year Festival. The Voyage to the Seas Festival was a festival unique to the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. In order to celebrate the Sapphire family's first voyage to the seas, after losing the dragon-slaying war, the Sapphire family had no choice but to migrate from the continent to the archipelago and establish their own country. In order to whitewash the background of their failure, the day they set out to sea was promoted as the day they set sail to pursue their dreams. Commoners might prefer the New Year Festival, which was a festival passed down through generations. However, the Festival of the Seas was an annual festival that the nobles of the archipelago country had to celebrate. Thank you, Sir Layton, for taking the trouble to deliver the news. This is what I should do, Lord Baron. How are my grandmother, father, brother, sister, madam, and Lytton? Everything is fine. That's good. After chatting with Leiden about the current situation in Tulip Castle, List found out that the Tulip fleet had yet to return. Unknowingly, he had already returned to the castle. Leiden and his group had not eaten lunch yet, so he immediately asked the kitchen to prepare lunch for them. Sir Baron, is the Flower Town going to chop down all the trees in the Thorns Ridge? Loudon asked the question that had been on his mind along the way. In the past 2 days, the logging team had already chopped out a large area of open space. There's a plan to kill them all and cut off World of Warcraft's habitat. However, they did not have enough manpower for the time being. We can only chop down the trees on both sides of the road and clear the area to reduce the risk of World of Warcraft's invasion. That's a good idea. World of Warcraft in the forest is a terrifying existence, while World of Warcraft in the wilderness is just a slightly stronger beast. A knight with a horse wouldn't be caught off guard by World of Warcraft in an open area. Even magic attacks could be dodged. Moreover, horses were extremely fast and World of Warcraft might not be able to catch up. On the other hand, a knight could launch a charge in an open area, become one with the horse, and use all kinds of secret cheat techniques. They maintained the etiquette and courtesy between nobles. Leiden and the others took their leave after lunch. List, on the other hand, needed to make arrangements. Mr. Carter, the Tulip family will be coming to the castle to celebrate the Going Out to the Sea Festival with me in 3 days. I'm not very keen on such a noisy occasion, so I'll leave it to you to make the arrangements. Don't worry, Master. When I was young, I participated in Tulip Castle's seafaring festival many times. The scene of Steward Lewis hosting the festival banquet is deeply engraved in my mind. Now the castle has an endless supply of seafood and World of Warcraft meat. Apart from the lack of alcohol, we can definitely hold a perfect banquet. I remember that there is a winemaker among the new serfs? Yes, his name is Frank Distiller, but he only knows how to brew fruit wine. He doesn't know how to brew white wine, red wine, or beer. Besides, we don't have hops. List frowned. We don't have any beer with hops? There is still half a barrel hidden in the cellar. This is the last bit of enjoyment you have, Master. I'm a bit reluctant to take it out, Carter said regretfully. In his mind, List was already the most important person. Then don't take it out. List blinked. Carter replied with a knowing smile. I think so too. Unfortunately, when Leiden left, I forgot to ask him to pass on a few words to Levis and have Levis help me purchase a batch of alcohol and ingredients. So in the end it's still because of the bad roads. Otherwise, the gold coins in the castle would have been spent and not left to rot. Perhaps you could ask Mr. Marcus to pass on the message? No, Teacher Marcus has more important things to do. He needs to look after the logging team and train the night squad. I don't think it's a bad thing to let Sir Father see the Flower Town's poverty during the Going Out to the Sea festival. Wouldn't the Count's conscience hurt when he saw that the Flower Town didn't even have hops? Carter said with a smile. Master, you are getting more and more free and easy. List smiled slightly. I recently read a night novel. There is a short poem in it. If life deceives you, don't be sad, don't be impatient. Melancholy days need to be calm. Believe happy days will come. The heart is always yearning for the future. The present is often melancholy. Everything is fleeting, everything will pass. and the past will become a kind of nostalgia. The Count didn't attach much importance to his third son List as it wasn't a big deal. Therefore, although life was sometimes very shabby and poverty-stricken, the current List was still optimistic. Compared to the majority of commoners and lesser aristocrats, life in the flower town was already very perfect. Being able to eat white bread every day was an unattainable dream for many people. Over the next few days, the construction of the fief was still in full swing. Roads were repaired, trees were cut, and houses were built in the oyster settlement. The serfs, armed with the copper coins paid by List, were full of energy. Even the hot weather couldn't dampen their enthusiasm. The castle was also in full swing. The butler Carter was busy instructing the servants to clean the inside and outside and decorate the castle. The cook Abby Ladle, with her loud voice, ordered the 2 kitchen maids Irene and Little Lily around all day long, busying themselves with all kinds of ingredients. Marcus, with the night squad, guarded the logging team while practicing the foundation of cheek horse. Gort, Isaiah, and Blair were also working earnestly. Only List was a bit vexed. He couldn't find the location of the super-small saltpeter mine. The mission had been completed, but the saltpeter mine reward had yet to be discovered. No one had reported to him that an unusual stone had been found somewhere, nor was there any unusual situation worthy of his attention. For 3 days in a row there was no clue, leaving List at a loss. It wasn't that the saltpeter mine was of great value. Apart from using it to make ice for the time being, he didn't know what use saltpeter could be used for. Rather, the situation was not very optimistic, making him worry that something had gone wrong with the smoke mission. The previous mission rewards had been delivered to him on the same day. Could it be that my cheat is about to leave me? At night, lying in bed, looking at the Mushroom Settlement's mission, which was still hanging, List was very worried. Fortunately, the worry only lasted until the 4th day. On this day, after Gort and the logging team entered the Thorns Ridge to work, another team followed them. They were the gravel transportation team. They were responsible for crushing the stones in the Thorns Ridge and then transporting them to both sides of the road to pave the road. While they were constantly looking for stones to smash, they suddenly discovered a pile of rubble embedded in the ground, accompanied by a large amount of white crystal-like substance. At first, they thought that it was salt. Salt was very important in daily life, so the serfs were very happy. Sir Lord would reward them for getting something good. But after a simple taste, they discovered that the white substance didn't have the slightest saltiness. On the contrary, it was a bit bitter. Despite this, they still scraped a lot of the white substance and gave it to Gort for verification. Gort couldn't distinguish it, so he explained the situation to List. Chapter 70. When dissolved in water, saltpeter would absorb a lot of heat. This was the principle behind making ice with saltpeter. Thanks to the experience of reading novels in the past, List knew a lot of such common knowledge. He also knew that saltpeter could be reused. Saltpeter is a magical substance. It can dissolve in water and make the water very cold until it freezes. List directed the servant to pour the white powder into the basin. Then the powder gradually melted. Tom put his finger into the water and shouted in surprise, "Master, master, the water really turned cold, it's so cold." Gort pushed Tom away, curious and hesitant. Finally, he put his finger in. "It's indeed much colder than before." List, is this the means of a magician? I once saw a magician who was good at ice magic. He always made a lot of ice in the summer to make money. However, after a moment of silence, the water only cooled a little but did not freeze. List, why didn't it turn into ice? Teacher Gort, a little powder is not enough to make ice with saltpeter. Now, it only proves that it is indeed saltpeter. List smiled faintly. Then, while you are crushing the rocks, collect all the saltpeter and send it into the castle. Don't miss a single one. Alright, I look forward to the moment when you make ice. Having ice in the summer is what nobles should enjoy. Tomorrow was the sailing festival, and the castle would host a banquet. At night, looking at the amount of saltpeter powder collected in a day, which was enough to fill a barrel, List excitedly instructed the servants to start making real saltpeter ice. When dissolved in water, the saltpeter would release heat and turn water into ice. However, the ice water that directly melted the saltpeter was poisonous, so a vat and a copper basin with good thermal conductivity were needed. The vat was filled with water, the copper basin was also filled with water, and the copper basin was then placed into the vat. The saltpeter was poured into the vat and waited for it to absorb heat, turning the water into ice. Because there was enough saltpeter powder, the heat absorption effect was very strong. Within a moment, the water in the vat began to slowly freeze, and after a while, even the water in the copper basin began to freeze. It's frozen. It really froze. What a magical scene. This is the work of the legendary alchemists. Marcus, Gort, Isaiah, and Blair, who were watching from the side, were all amazed. In their impression, there was only ice in winter. The nobles had to build an ice house to enjoy the cool of ice in summer. However, an ice cellar was a luxury. Only a wealthy lord could organize a large team of ice miners to dig ice from rivers and lakes in winter. A fallen aristocrat like Gort could only rub a few ice cubes in the Tulip Castle every year to have a taste. Marcus, Blair, and Isaiah weren't even qualified to taste xia bing. List was equally excited. He had heard of saltpeter making ice, but it was his first time making it himself. Seeing water turn into ice with his own eyes was a very shocking feeling. Master, it's frozen. Thomas's eyes lit up as he looked at the vat. Take the ice. List nodded, maintaining a reserved aristocratic smile on his face, calm and dignified. Cut the ice into small pieces. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, everyone can get a small piece of ice. Carter whispered, Master, the ice is too expensive. The servants don't need it, right? It doesn't matter, Mr. Carter. Just do as I say. Yes, Master. On behalf of all the servants, I express my most sincere respect for your generosity. Carter bowed. Meeting a generous aristocratic master was indeed the servant's luck. After saying that, he directed Thomas to carry the copper basin of ice cubes into the kitchen and began to cut them. List then called Tom, store this vat of ice water. When the sun rises tomorrow, take it out to dry. Don't waste a drop. Gort was puzzled. List, what's the meaning of this? The ice can be used, why do we need to dry it? Saltpeter directly melts the condensed ice. Of course it can be used, but it can't be eaten. Drying it in the sun will turn it into saltpeter and then repeatedly use it to make ice. Is saltpeter really so magical? It's far more magical than you think. List thought to himself. If he could find sulfur, he would dare to make gunpowder right now. Compared to gunpowder was technically not an explosive, but it was still a highly flammable explosive. It was suitable for making some soil bombs, and its power was at least not weaker than the magic released by low-level World of Warcraft. If used in a low-level battle, it would have a surprising effect. Of course, in a world with dragons, elves and magic, gunpowder had no decisive advantage. The dishes at the banquet were not plentiful. List could not bear to entertain Gort and the others with lavish meals every day. The castle's supplies were his personal guarantee for a luxurious life. The wine was also relatively poor. It was sour beer without hops. But the atmosphere at the banquet was high because everyone had a few ice cubes in their cup. The ice cubes melted, making the whole cup of beer cold. After drinking it, one's whole body instantly became cool and bright. In this increasingly hot weather, it was definitely the best enjoyment. List, I propose cheers for the cold beer. Gort happily raised his cup. List raised his cup in response. Then for the cold beer, cheers. Cheers. Gulp, gulp. The sound of beer being gulped down could be heard from the dining table. The kitchen. At the dining table, Irene kept fiddling with the ice cubes on the plate with a spoon, making a clattering sound. Abby Ladle couldn't help but scold, Irene, stop making unpleasant sounds. Master rewarded you with ice cubes, hurry up and eat them. Compared to eating ice cubes, I prefer to watch them melt. Mrs. Abby, don't you think the temperature in the kitchen has dropped today? Irene Fourfingers continued to fiddle with the ice cubes and looked at Lily Bathtub in the next seat. Little Lily, do you feel it? Of course, there are ice cubes on each of our plates. After saying that, little Lily stuck out her tongue and licked the ice cubes on the spoon. She was reluctant to eat them all at once. The ice cubes had no taste, but they were cool and comfortable, making the heat of the whole body subside. Abby angrily said, Little Lily, I don't allow you to talk to Irene while eating. Your clumsy and rude table manners will only bring shame to the kitchen. Cough cough. Butler Carter forcefully bit the ice cubes in his mouth. He was already in his 50s, but his teeth were still very good. Mrs. Abby, they are still children. It is a bit rude to allow them to eat. Mr. Carter, it's not that I don't listen to your orders, but you shouldn't indulge them. They will become lawless. Being clumsy is already disappointing enough. If they can't even learn a little etiquette, they will stay in the kitchen for the rest of their lives, unable to become maids upstairs. Abby seriously said. Carter and Emosen glanced at each other. They both knew that Abby was a good person with a hard mouth but a soft heart. However, Irene was obviously not convinced. Mrs. Abby, I don't want to go upstairs. It's not comfortable upstairs. I have to be careful not to leave even a footprint. I want to be a cook in the future. I like to work in the kitchen. You can give up on that idea. Abby suddenly exploded. With me in the kitchen, you will never become a cook. Little girl, remember, don't offend me. But you will grow old one day. Chapter 71. Before dawn, the voice of the butler Carter continued to appear upstairs and downstairs in the castle. Tom, cheer up. Thomas, prepare the Lord's best holiday suit, frack Abier, don't make any mistakes. Mrs. Morrison, there is dust on the window on the second floor, let the maid clean it as soon as possible, we can't leave the impression of laziness on the upcoming distinguished guests. God, why did the kitchen take out the oysters to dry? Quickly take them away. No, Irene, absolutely not today. I need to see the castle's water tank overflow, but Jesse, you don't have to fetch water, John and Parker will do it. You need to quickly inspect all the cordyceps, even if it is a holiday we can't ignore the most important things. Don't take the whole thing out to dry, you should break it, pieces of crushed ice are easier to dry. Carter took out a handkerchief and wiped the sweat on his head. Today was really busy, he still had a lot of expensive crystal tableware to wipe, but he had to explain the trivial matters first. He looked at the new servant Jim, who had just arrived in the castle, struggling to move the water tank that made the ice yesterday to the sun. He couldn't help but tell the other party to use his brain. Jim was tall and smart but inexperienced. When he heard Carter's words, he immediately apologized. I'm sorry, Mr. Carter, I didn't think of this. I will break the ice now and put it in a few buckets and basins. Don't spill it, it's all saltpeter. The Lord specifically ordered that it is very valuable. Please rest assured, Mr. Carter. After patrolling around the castle, Carter went to the second floor, just in time to see Thomas holding the frack Abier and entering List's bedroom. He also knocked on the door and went in. Master, you woke up very early today. With the help of Thomas, List put on the clothes he hated, as well as the particularly uncomfortable disc-shaped pleated collar. Laugh. His mood was not very good for a moment. The castle is so noisy, it's a bit difficult for me to fall asleep. Carter immediately bowed, his expression a little uneasy. I'm sorry, it's my fault for disturbing you, Master. List was just a little angry when he woke up, but when he saw Carter apologize, his anger quickly subsided. He shouldn't have let this loyal old man bear this small burden. This has nothing to do with you, Mr. Carter. Don't blame yourself. Today is the sailing festival, so I have to get up early. Carter breathed a sigh of relief. Thomas squinted at him, a little disappointed. He was looking forward to seeing the master scold the butler. After putting on his clothes, List ate a simple breakfast and rode on Fire Dragon, ready to patrol around the town. Today was a festival. Even if only the nobles would celebrate it, he still had to enjoy the support and compliments of his subjects. At this moment he had already seen Gort, who was also dressed splendidly. There were also Marcus, Blair and Isaiah, who were dressed in relatively grand attire. The three of them were not nobles with titles yet. Sir Baron, Gort offers his holiday greetings to you. Sir Marcus, Isaiah offers his holiday greetings to you. Sir Baron, Isaiah offers his holiday greetings to you. Sir Baron, Blair offers his holiday greetings to you. The four of them greeted List in turn, meticulously displaying aristocratic etiquette. List also responded with aristocratic etiquette. Happy holidays. Then came his 4 retainer knight as well as 12 quasi-retainer knight, one after another, saluting and offering their holiday greetings to him. Finally, the castle servants put down their work and, under Carter's lead, also offered their holiday greetings. When he took Gort and the others as well as the retainer knight, to patrol the town. On both sides of the road came a variety of, Sir Lord Triplix offers his holiday greetings to you. The freedmen knelt on one knee and the serfs knelt on both knees. Under such etiquette, the authority of the aristocracy was continuously consolidated and deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. When the commoners were already accustomed to kneeling, the foundation of the rule would become unbreakable. My lord, good news. While patrolling the tomato settlement, List saw Jesse Ricewater. The former assistant serving man had been promoted to serving man, receiving a daily wage of 2 copper coins. Jesse, what's the good news? I just checked the tomato settlement's tomato sprite worm stock and discovered that the tomato sprite worm has already been born. Is that so? This is indeed good news. List was very happy. The castle's 7th sprite worm had already arrived. List led the patrolling team to John Shoulderpole's tomato field. The tomato sprite worm stalk in the middle was clearly very tall, bearing red tomatoes. On one of the small yellow flowers, a red, chubby sprite worm lazily basked in the sun. John Shoulderpole nervously looked at the sprite worm from the side. He was obliged to protect the sprite worm on behalf of the Lord, to prevent it from being harmed by anything and to prevent it from being contracted by anyone. Only lords were qualified to contract sprite worms. Only those who possessed battle chi and magic could establish a contract with him. Sir Lord, John Shoulderpole offers you his holiday greetings. Happy holiday, John. List gave a simple greeting, then walked in front of the tomato sprite worm and sprinkled a bit of jade powder to attract it. Next, he smeared a bit of jade powder on his finger and extended his finger toward the little fellow. Chi circulated on his fingertip, magic power and the charm of the jade powder were unleashed together, and the tomato sprite worm bit down without hesitation. A feeling of telepathy flashed past. The tomato sprite worm had already established a contract with List. Gort looked at the tomato sprite worm enviously and said with a smile, "Today is truly a joyous day. The tomato sprite worm seems to have chosen today to be born. I offer you my holiday greetings, List." If his fief had also had a sprite worm, perhaps it would not have ended up going bankrupt. It is a smart sprite worm, I can feel it. List smiled, then turned to John Shoulderpole and said, "John, the tomato field where the worm stalk grows will still be cultivated by you. Remember not to harm the worm stalk, it is the most important existence in the tomato settlement. Sir Lord, please rest assured, John is willing to give up his life to protect it." He spoke very excitedly. The tomato fields near the worm stalk were all high-yielding and high-quality tomatoes, which meant that he could keep enough tomatoes after paying taxes. For him, ever since List rewarded him with a nalda, his affluent life had begun to take off. It will get better and better in the future. I want to plant tomatoes for Sir Lord for a lifetime. Chapter 72. The Count's caravan appeared in the Thorns Ridge at around 10 o'clock in the morning. Learning from the lesson of being discovered when the caravan arrived not far from the castle last time, the patrol team had been loitering around the Thorns Ridge road. Currently, a large number of trees had been cut down on both sides of the road. The logs had yet to be transported away and were laid flat on the ground, looking like a floor. This undoubtedly provided the humans with a very good field of vision and reduced the risk of World of Warcraft invasion. But this wasn't the end, the logging work still hadn't been completed. Additionally, List was preparing to erect 2 guardrails to cut off World of Warcraft's route. Although the wooden guardrails had zero effect on World of Warcraft was still the brain of the beast. Seeing the guardrails blocking the way, the beast would most likely turn around and not destroy the guardrails. With the patrol team's notification, List led Gort and the others to welcome this huge caravan. There were only 5 carriages, but an entire night caravan. Neatly dressed and brightly armed, this night caravan had initially followed the Count on his conquests on the continent. Many knights were conferred nobles due to their military exploits and went to their fiefs to enjoy the good life of the rentier class. Then another batch of Knight Academy novices joined in, maintaining the integrity of the orders of chivalry. The Count didn't ride in a carriage. He rode on his beloved black leopard horse. He didn't even wear a festive costume and instead wore a full body armor. List felt that he deliberately wore a military uniform in order to avoid wearing the fracabue that could give people rash, especially the disc-like Raff. In the summer, Raff wasn't that friendly to people. No one would like to wear a scarf in the summer. Lord Father, List offers his holiday greetings to you. The proper aristocratic etiquette still needed to be carried out. Happy holidays. After Lee William responded, he looked at the castle not far away and sighed with emotion. It has been more than 10 years, but this small castle still hasn't changed much. There's no need to say hello, let's go directly to the castle. The weather outside is too hot, your grandmother needs to cool off early. All right. List led the way. A moment later the caravan stopped at the castle gate. Under Carter's lead, all the servants stood on the left and right sides to welcome the distinguished guests. Gort stepped forward in an exaggerated manner. My Lord Count, Gort is so excited to see you. You are even more elegant than you were a few months ago. Even though my do-chi has weakened, I can still feel the powerful pressure emanating from your body. The pressure from the Sky Knight. Lee William enjoyed such flattery very much, saying with a smile, Gort, your complexion is even more rosy. How is life in the flower town? Gort shook his clothes and bowed deeply. I, Gort, offer you my holiday greetings. Life in the flower town is full of vitality. I enjoy working here. Just as he spoke, Madame Penelope's voice came from behind. There is so much dust on the way, I need water to clean it. Going on such a long journey is like going through a nightmare. I want to end it, yet I have to bite the bullet and continue. Grandmother, Liszt offers you my holiday greetings. Happy holidays. Madame Penelope, supported by a maid, entered the castle. She sized it up a few times. It must have been hard for you to live in the countryside and suffer from such a poverty-stricken life. The only thing worth envying is probably the smell of this small house, the smell of the countryside. Saying that, she added, I feel more comfortable than the smell of the tulip castle. If you feel comfortable, then you might as well stay here for a few more days. That won't do. The servants don't know how to take care of my flowers. I will go crazy if I don't see them for a day. Following behind Madame Penelope was a middle-aged woman dressed in jewels. She wore a tall lady's hat covered with all kinds of feathers. The hat was originally called the Flying Bird Hat. The feathers symbolized the sky, and only the wives of the Sky Knight could wear it. Later on it became popular. All aristocratic women would wear all kinds of exaggerated and exotic hats during the holidays. In addition to the conspicuous hat, the woman also gave off a vixen aura, especially her eyes. Liszt, who had inherited the memories of his predecessor, had the most profound impression of this pair of eyes. At that time he always felt that this pair of eyes was secretly observing him at any time, yet not revealing it. But when she smiled, it had the sweet flavor of a girl next door. But now, when Liszt looked at this pair of eyes again, it was very easy to conclude that this was a pair of fox eyes. They were slightly long and narrow, with the corners of their eyes raised and curved into crescent moons when they smiled. Madam, Liszt offers you his holiday greetings. With a faint smile on his face, he routinely displayed the impeccable aristocratic etiquette. Even if he was disgusted, his expression was still as warm as a spring breeze. Happy holidays, Liszt. You have grown taller. The middle-aged woman responded with a smile. She was the current Countess Marie Loa. She was also holding a very tender youngster's hand. The youngster was obviously dismissive of the castle's environment. He reluctantly put on a bit of superficial respect and performed the etiquette. Brother Liszt, Lytton offers you his holiday greetings. Happy holidays. Liszt responded faintly and continued to say to Madame Marie, Madam, please take Lytton into the castle to rest. I will go and greet my brother, sister, as well as Sir Layton. It was not the first time that Levis and Li Weiwei had come to the flower town. Therefore, after greeting each other and entering the castle, Liszt greeted the aristocrats who came with the convoy. These aristocrats were all minor aristocrats who held positions in Tulip Castle. Most of them were lords and knights. There was also a baron, the captain of the Knight of Tulip Castle, Mickey. The head of the Coral Islands Orders of Chivalry was Lee William. The captain, Mickey, was responsible for the training of the Orders of Chivalry and the safety of Tulip Castle. He could be regarded as the de facto head of the regiment. After exchanging pleasantries, the castle became even more lively. Because there were too many people, with a large number of aristocrats upstairs and an even larger number of knights downstairs, 15 servants were not enough. Fortunately, the Count and his party had brought a lot of servants as well as a lot of food and drinks. They probably understood that there was nothing in the countryside. They had come here to have a picnic. As the butler, Carter was naturally the leader of all the servants, even if Tulip Castle's deputy butler, Silva, was among them. Carter, if there is not enough food in the castle, then don't bother. Master has brought enough food from Tulip Castle for a few days. Silva was younger than Carter. His swallow-tailed coat was just right. Standing among the servants, he looked like a noble aristocrat. Carter used to be just the butler of the castle. When dealing with Silva, the deputy butler, he needed to listen to the other party's instructions. But now, he represented Liszt. Chapter 73. Black Tulip, it's so beautiful. Lee Williams swayed the unique black tulip, his face full of softness. The rise of the family relied on tulip, so he naturally had a unique love for tulip. Madame Penelope was also swaying the purple-black flowers, having a new kind of magic ingredient, and a tulip at that, is a sign of the family's continued prosperity. I originally thought that Liszt was not a lucky person, but now it seems that he is the luckiest one in the tulip family. Black tulip should be vigorously promoted for the family. Madame Marie said casually. Lytton followed behind Madame Marie and said with a trace of innocence, "It's so beautiful, father. Can I also have a black tulip? I want to plant it on my bedroom windowsill and see it every day." There will be a chance, Litten. Levis directly interrupted Litton's words, looked at the picked capsules and asked List, a batch of seeds has already been picked. There are a total of 35 mature capsules, each with about 30 seeds. I think it should be able to be planted on a large scale within half a year if I hand it over to Xiangxiang to cultivate. Of course, Xiangxiang's speed in planting tulip is the best among the greater elves. I'll give you the seeds later. Good. The two of them simply chatted for a while before deciding on the planting of the black tulips. They did not give the others any leeway to interrupt. The two brothers were of the same opinion. They could bring Li Weiwei along, but they would absolutely not bring Litten. They were not raised by the same mother, so naturally they were not on the same page. The Count looked at Madame Marie and Litten. He then looked at List, who was already much taller than himself, and ultimately said nothing. Madame Penelope whispered in Li Weiwei's ear, the two boys already have their own opinions. Look at Li William's face, it's really delightful. Although it was a whisper. However, everyone was gathered together, so there was no need to keep it a secret. Li William could only pretend that he didn't hear anything. He turned to List and said, the flower farm is in ruins. When I discovered the tulip here, I planted a sea of tulip flowers. I hope you can recreate the scene from back then. Reviving the flower farm has always been in my plans. I can see that you really do understand how to be a qualified lord. The flower town exudes a thriving atmosphere. I hope that it will continue. After seeing the black tulip, the group returned to the castle as it was too hot. On the horse field outside the castle, Li Williams saw Black Dragon. As a sky knight, he had a very good eye for horses. With just a glance, he could tell that Black Dragon was more spirited than his black leopard horse. What lineage does it have? I don't know. List didn't say anything about the dragon's bloodline. Once he did, the Count would definitely snatch Black Dragon away. Dragon horses were of great importance to aristocrats. It might be a mid-level World of Warcraft bloodline. If you can breed a herd of similarly spirited horses, then I will purchase a batch from you to replace the Orders of Chivalry's mounts. That might take a long time. Li William looked at List with a touch of profound meaning in his eyes. Don't be impatient, time is on your side. In the castle, the servants had already prepared the banquet. After a bit of washing, the formal banquet began. The male servants brought out the dishes one by one and placed them in front of each noble guest. Carter gave his all to command the servants in an orderly manner. The food brought by the Count didn't cause any reaction. It was what they often ate. However, as the seafood was served, the originally dull banquet reached a climax. Many of the seemingly delicious dishes were things they had never eaten before. What is this? Under the guidance of the maid, Madame Penelope dug the clam out of its shell and took a bite. It was fresh, smooth and smooth. A fragrance completely different from that of continental dishes bloomed on her taste buds. It's very delicious. It's so soft that I almost don't need to use my teeth. Clams are a kind of seafood that is abundant on the coast. The meat is very delicious. Not only is it very tasty, but it can also prevent the occurrence of some diseases. Li Weiwei imitated the maid and peeled a mantis shrimp. What is this? As the host, List continued to explain, mantis shrimp, it might be more interesting to call it mantis shrimp. Its taste is fresh, sweet, tender, and soft. It is not inferior to the Longtaro Castle's rock lobster. Unfortunately, it is already summer. If it was spring, the mantis shrimp spawning season, its taste would be even more tender and delicious. So they are all seafood? Yes. The flower town doesn't have any specialty products. If you want to improve the recipe, you can only look at the East Coast's Azure Wave Sea. Fortunately, there are countless delicious seafood waiting to be developed. Seafood was an important source of food. Currently, not too many aristocrats had paid attention to this. After today's banquet, the Coral Island might usher in a craze for seafood development. Of course it might not. In the eyes of the aristocrats, the sea was far less important than the land. Sometimes, it wasn't one's vision that restricted development. Rather, it was inertia. List discovered this from everyone's endless praises for the seafood. The Count and the others indeed had a very high evaluation of the seafood. However, they hoped to buy seafood from the flower town instead of catching it themselves. Perhaps, in their opinion, they shouldn't waste the serfs who farmed to become fishermen. Of course I can provide seafood for Tulip Castle. In fact, as you can see, I am in the process of opening the road to the Thorns Ridge. Once it is open, I will form a caravan from the flower town to travel to and from the Coral City. I will sell the goods produced by the flower town on a regular basis. The Count took a sip of red wine and nodded, saying, "Once the restrictions of the Thorns Ridge are lifted, the Flower Town might also be able to develop into a wealthy town. Like your sister, train a group of knight. The glory of aristocracy is always fought for on horseback." After the seafood, another delicacy was served. It was the Wind Peregrine Falcon Jerky. This was also the last main course. Using the World of Warcraft jerky as the end of the main course was enough to be the finale. No one complained as they watched the guests eat happily. As the butler, Carter stood upright next to the banquet, his heart full of pride. Everyone thought that the Flower Town was a barren and shabby town, that the Lord ate poor food and lived a simple life. However, the banquet before him was enough to show the Flower Town's wealth. Wealthy aristocrats were respectable aristocrats. The hard work of the servants under him set off the castle's aristocratic temperament. He believed that no one would think that List was a countryside baron anymore. Here, the Flower Town, was a place blessed by the glory of the night. "Master, can we serve the dessert? Mrs. Abby has already made enough ice cream." Chapter 74. The banquet was a success. The dessert ice cream was a good way to soothe the heat during the meal. This bit of ice cream used up all the ice in the kitchen. List originally thought that the Count's people would ask why the Flower Town could also produce ice cubes. Unexpectedly, no one asked. Probably because they were used to using ice in Tulip Castle, they simply didn't notice that there should be no ice here. After the meal, the aristocrats chatted. List let Gort greet them on his behalf, while he and Levis went to the study. "Brother, how many days before the Tulip Fleet returns?" "According to the usual schedule, it should return to the Coral City's pier in about a week." Levis took out a cigar and lit it. "You want to talk about the slave trade?" "Yes, the next time the Tulip Fleet goes to sea to trade, I hope that you can help me buy a batch of serfs." "Sure, but how much can you pay?" 10 silver coins for a serf? That was the price in the past. Nowadays there is no fighting in the Grand Duchy, so the sale of serfs is rare and very difficult to find. But a while ago, I also heard that the Lord of the Small Kerchief Island was killed by pirates and lost his fief. The Sapphire Grand Duke is very angry about this and has already spread the news to the major fiefs, asking for assistance in besieging the pirates. However, after the pirates destroyed the Small Kerchief Island, they disappeared without a trace. Some people think that this is not a pirate but a lord in disguise. The Big Kerchief Island has offered a reward of 300 gold coins for clues about the pirates. Levis gave a brief account of the repercussions of the Small Kerchief Island encountering the pirates, before continuing, "However, apart from this, the Grand Duchy is calm. The slave trade needs to be further away, preferably at the border between the Eagle Kingdom and the Steel Ridge Kingdom." "Name a price. If I can accept it, then I will agree." 20 silver coins for a serf, it cannot be lower than this price. Otherwise, I will not be able to make a profit. Levis gave his price. "Another thing, if the number of serfs is too large, then I need to pay the gold coins now. Otherwise, I will not be able to explain it to my father." List thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. 100 gold coins, help me bring back 500 serfs." "How refreshing. I have a small request. These 500 serfs should be mainly young people. Buy more female serfs. In addition, if there are serfs with skills, buy them first." "You mean blacksmiths, tailors, cobblers and such serfs?" "This won't be easy. Craftsmen are mostly freedmen, and the laws of every country protect freedmen. It's very difficult to sell them like serfs at will. Every aspect of a city's operation was inseparable from freedmen, so the laws of the country protected them." List clenched his teeth. "I will add another 20 gold coins. Among the 500 serfs, at least 100 are craftsmen." "Sure." He painfully counted 120 golden naldas to Levis. Looking at his shriveled wallet, List felt a little melancholy. Originally, he had around 150 gold coins, but as he continued to pay the wages of the civilians, he had spent a lot of gold coins. Now there were only 16 gold coins left in the wallet, which could dry up at any time. Fortunately, the passage to the Thorns Ridge was about to be opened. So long as the caravan was established, the Flower Town seafood could be sold to the Coral City. He believed that the delicious seafood could create a good fortune for him. After digesting, the Count's convoy began to return. List presented a batch of oysters and other seafood. This decision was made after Carter told him that the Count had brought a lot of food. Courtesy demanded reciprocity. When the convoy left the Flower Town, the castle regained its tranquility. Although there were a lot of plates, wine glasses and other things that needed to be cleaned up, and the small garden outside the castle was trampled out of shape by the knights. But all of this, Carter could organize the servants to slowly clean it up without any pressure. There were 15 servants in the castle, which was enough. Teacher Gort, the festival is about to end. We need to free ourselves from the festive atmosphere. The town's construction progress cannot be stopped. Continue to expand the logging and gravel teams as well as the fence construction teams, and strive to open the passage as soon as possible. Gort still wanted to continue, as you wish. At the banquet he was like a fish in water, talking and laughing wittily with the count. He had not had such a good time in many years. Over the next few days, besides supervising the logging work, List also paid attention to another matter: the training of the fruit-stealing monkeys. At first, 7 fruit-stealing monkeys were caught alive, but they had all survived and recovered. However, 2 of them were lame and it was not possible for them to climb trees. The remaining 5 were given to the town's hunters for training. Ropes, whips, and fruits were used together. Very soon the unruly fruit-stealing monkeys were tamed. They climbed trees and entered cages. 3 female monkeys and 4 male monkeys. I believe that in the second half of the year, there will be 10 fruit-stealing monkeys. Monkeys generally gave birth to 2 babies a year, but each one usually gave birth to 1 baby. List looked at the fruit-stealing monkeys that were becoming more and more obedient and was very satisfied. Without the fruit-stealing monkeys' destruction, this year's fragrant coconuts can ripen. I believe that in 1 or 2 months, we will be able to drink fresh and sweet coconut juice. Fragrant coconuts didn't have a seasonal pattern. Except for winter, they would continuously bear fruit in other seasons. The Coral City does not seem to have fragrant coconuts for sale. Perhaps they will become a major specialty of the flower town. Unfortunately, no fragrant coconut sprite worm has been bred. While he was outlining the future of the fragrant coconut tree, the hunters had already begun to train the fruit-stealing monkeys to pick the fruits. The fake fruits were tied to branches for the fruit-stealing monkeys to pick. If they picked the fruits, they would be rewarded with a peanut. If they didn't pick the fruits, they would be whipped. The fruit-stealing monkeys could not run away due to the ropes tied around their necks. If they dared to run, they would be whipped. Remember, animals can also bear grudges and throw tantrums. As long as they work diligently, do not whip them at will. If I find out that you have whipped the fruit-stealing monkeys for no reason, then I will whip you. List emphasized with a serious expression. He did not want the fruit-stealing monkeys to rebel in the future and smash a few fruit farmers to death. Sir Lord, please rest assured. We will not forget what you have instructed us to do. The part-time hunters understood that they would henceforth change from farmers to fruit farmers. They were all elated to have the fruit-stealing monkeys work. If it was not for training, List would be reluctant to whip them. For fruit farmers, the fruit-stealing monkeys were like knights' horses. After saying goodbye to the fruit-stealing monkeys, List returned to the castle and called over the few merchants among the new serfs. Old Grandette, Sherlock, Harpagon, you are merchants on the Smallkerchief Island? List repeated his question. Yes, Sir Lord. Is there a merchant on the Smallkerchief Island called Plushkin? Old Grandette replied, Sir Lord, there are only 3 of us who specialize in peddling small goods on the Smallkerchief Island. Moreover, I know the names of everyone in the city, but there is no one called Plushkin. Chapter 75. The ice cream pushed the festive banquet to its climax and soothed the heat brought about by the hot weather. However, although the banquet was over, the aristocrats who were lying on their chairs to digest their food were still discussing ice cream. Li Weiwei was the most enthusiastic among them. She had already fallen deeply in love with the taste of ice cream. List, tell me, how do you make ice cream? Let Mrs. Abby tell you. I just put forward an idea. Mrs. Abby completed the rest of the steps. List had no intention of keeping it a secret. If he could produce ice on a large scale, then the ice cream recipe must be kept safe as a means of making money. However, there was no way to produce ice on a large scale, and there was no way to produce ice cream on a large scale. It was even more impossible to transport it over long distances for sale. It was useless to keep the recipe in his hands. Of course, blackmailing Li Weiwei was still necessary. I will only tell you the ice cream recipe and you are not allowed to disclose it to others. In addition, as a fair deal, you can't take my things for free, right? What do you want? Pig iron or wrought iron? 100 kilograms of pig iron. I can only give you this much. If you want more, I would rather not have the ice cream recipe. Okay. List understood the limits. If he gave it away for free, it would be blind generosity. Maybe the other party would treat him as a fool. If he was too ruthless, it would not be good. After all, they were blood-related siblings and could help each other. After negotiating this small deal, he suddenly felt a little emotional. He remembered his younger self was on Earth. In order to win the favor of the girl he admired, he made ice cream by hand and gave it to her. Although he failed to win the heart of the beauty, he learned the craft of making ice cream. Now it seemed that it was not in vain. It would be great if I could make ice on a large scale. Making ice cream is still troublesome. If I could make popsicles directly, I would definitely make a fortune. Even if I could make ice directly, I would still make a fortune. The ice cream recipe was sold to Li Weiwei. However, when it came to Levis, he directly gave it to the other party. Brother, how many days before the Tulip Fleet returns? According to the usual time, it will return to the Coral City dock in about a week. Levis took out a cigar and lit it. Do you want to talk about the slave trade? Yes, the next time the Tulip Fleet goes to sea for trade, I hope you can help me buy a batch of serfs. After getting the formula, Levis was very easy to talk to. Sure, but how much are you willing to pay? 10 silver coins for a serf. That was the price in the past. Now that there are no internal battles in the Grand Duchy, serfs are rarely sold, and it is very difficult to find them. But a while ago, I also heard that the Lord of Small Kerchief Island was killed by pirates and his territory was lost. The Sapphire Grand Duke is very angry about this. He has already spread the word to all the major territories, asking for assistance in encircling these pirates. However, after the pirates destroyed the Small Kerchief Island, they had already disappeared without a trace. Some people think that this is not a group of pirates, but a certain lord in disguise. The Big Kerchief Island is offering a reward of 300 gold coins for information on the pirates. Levis briefly talked about the repercussions caused by the pirates on the Small Kerchief Island, and then said, but apart from this time the Grand Duchy is calm and peaceful. The slave trade needs a further direction, and it is best to search at the border between the Eagle Kingdom and the Steel Ridge Kingdom. Name a price. If I can accept it, I will agree. 20 silver coins for a serf, it cannot be lower than this price. Otherwise, I will not be able to make a profit. Levis gave his own price. In addition, if the number of serfs is too large, you need to pay the gold coins now, otherwise I will not be able to account to my father. Liszt thought for a moment and then nodded in agreement. 100 gold coins, help me bring back 500 serfs. Straightforward. I have a request. These 500 serfs, mainly young people, buy some female serfs. In addition, if there are serfs with a skill, buy them first. You mean blacksmiths, tailors, and cobblers? This is not easy to deal with. Craftsmen are mostly freedmen, and the laws of every country protect freedmen. It is very difficult to sell them as serfs at will. Every aspect of a city's operation was inseparable from freedmen, so the laws of the country would protect them. Liszt clenched his teeth. I will add another 20 gold coins. Among the 500 serfs, at least 100 are craftsmen. All right. Feeling distressed, he gave Levis 120 dazzling naldas. Looking at the shriveled purse, Liszt was quite melancholic. He originally had about 150 gold coins, but with the continuous payment of the commoners' wages, a lot of gold coins had been consumed. Now there were only 16 gold coins left in the purse, which could dry up at any time. Fortunately, the passage to the Thorns Ridge was about to be opened. As long as the caravan was established, the Flower Town seafood could be sold to the Coral City. He believed that the delicious seafood could create a good amount of wealth for him. After the matter of serfs was settled, Levis suddenly mentioned saltpeter. Liszt, can saltpeter ice be produced on a larger scale? I hope so, but unfortunately it is not possible. You can mine more saltpeter or... Brother, it is not that there is a saltpeter or for me to mine just because I want to mine it. In fact, there is only a small amount of saltpeter ore in the Flower Town. I can give you a bit of saltpeter powder and the raw ore from when saltpeter is mined. You can look for it yourself. There might be other saltpeter ore on the Coral Island. All right, I will look for it. You might not have noticed, but as long as ice can be produced in the summer, you can definitely earn a lot of gold coins. Levis took a puff from his cigar. When I find a saltpeter ore, I will not treat you unfairly. Did you see that Madame Marie is instigating father to intervene in the saltpeter ice production? I saw that. Liszt understood. Fortunately, father does not care about saltpeter ice production. In the summer, he would go to the palace to serve as the Grand Duke's groom. There are countless ice cubes in the palace to enjoy. There are many ice cellars on the Blue Dragon Island. I heard that the largest ice cellar is like a maze. There were workers transporting ice cubes who got lost and froze to death inside. List did not say anything. The greatest aristocrat he had seen was Merlin Longtaro. He did not know what the life of an aristocrat was like, especially an aristocratic family with a dragon. After digestion, the sun had begun to set. The Count and his party were also ready to return. If they did not leave, then they would have to travel at night. Before leaving, the Count rode a horse, followed by List, who also rode a horse. The flower town is very good. I hope that you can continue to be enterprising. However, it is not enough to become a qualified lord. The rise of the Tulip family is due to military exploits. The Grand Duke is in the prime of his life, and the flames of pioneering have never been extinguished. Therefore, if you want to leave the flower town, then don't give up on your desire for the glory of a knight. Wouldn't it be faster to make me a viscount? List cursed inwardly. The Count obviously did not like him, yet he was playing the role of a strict father. It felt somewhat strange. I understand. Subsequently, the two did not say anything and just rode quietly. After a while, the Count glanced at the black dragon under List. This is a good horse. Take good care of it, it will be the Lord's most important companion. Understood. Immediately after, the two returned and the Count joined the convoy. Carter, along with the servants, stood at the castle's gate and respectfully welcomed the distinguished guests. List said goodbye to them one by one. Grandmother, be careful, get on the carriage. My little boy, if Flower Town makes you uncomfortable, then come back to Tulip Castle. Although the smell there is not good, but it should still be there, said Madame Penelope. I will go to Tulip Castle often. Li Weiwei hugged him and said, 100 caddies of pig iron, when will you come to the Coral City to get it? I will. Madame Marie pulled the sullen Lytton, who wanted to ride a horse but couldn't. She just smiled at List and said goodbye. Captain Mickey and the other knight escorts followed the standard knight etiquette. Like Li Weiwei, Levis also hugged him, probably to show brotherly affection in front of the Count. List, the gate of Tulip Castle is always open to you. Thank you. Chapter 76. By the time the convoy left Flower Town, the castle had regained its tranquility. Although there were a lot of plates, wine glasses and other things that needed to be cleaned up, and the small garden outside the castle had been trampled out of shape by the night. However, Carter could organize the servants to slowly clean up all of this without any pressure. There were 15 servants in the castle, which was enough. Teacher Gort, the festival is about to end. We need to free ourselves from the festive atmosphere. The town's construction progress cannot be stopped. Continue to expand the logging and gravel teams as well as the fence construction teams, and strive to open the passage as soon as possible. Gort still wanted to continue, as you wish. At this banquet he was like a fish in water, talking and laughing with the Count. He had not had such a good time in many years. Flower Town is in the limelight. He used such adjectives to describe today's luncheon. There was a dazzling array of seafood as well as tongue-numbing ice cream. However, List had other ideas. In the evening, he drank a glass of red wine with Carter alone. Mr. Carter, I originally intended to show the impoverished side of Flower Town in exchange for assistance from Tulip Castle. However, I accidentally held a grand banquet with seafood, ice cream and World of Warcraft meat. There is no reason to complain about being poor. Carter said with a smile, My lord, you have shown your elegant demeanor. Your performance at the banquet was admirable. If I were a knight, I would probably stay in Flower Town and follow you. Another meaning of aristocrats flaunting their wealth was to show off their strength to attract followers. Viscount Trick Blackgrass was attracted by the charm displayed by the Count and became a follower. He helped the Tulip family, participated in the Grand Duchy's pioneering war, and eventually established the huge foundation of the Earl of Coral Island. But no knight stayed, did he? I believe that the seeds have been sown, and maybe one day they will suddenly bloom. That's a very philosophical statement, Mr. Carter. Let's drink to that. Cheers, my lord. After moistening his throat with a mouthful of red wine, List asked, How much food did my father bring today? I brought a lot of food, but most of it was used during the banquet. The leftovers were mainly beer and fine wheat flour. There were also some spices, anise, ginger, pepper, licorice, salt and sugar. How much wheat flour and beer? There are about 500 caddies of fine wheat flour and 30 barrels of beer. The fine wheat flour was obviously specially made for List to make white bread. He was a little lost in thought. He could feel that the Count still had fatherly feelings for him. Some of the details could be shown. For example, coming to the flower town to celebrate the festival was a sign of intimacy. If one really didn't care about List, then there was no need to come to a remote town to celebrate the festival. During the banquet, she deliberately did not care about saltpeter, but it could be said that she was protecting him, especially when Madame Marie specifically mentioned that the saltpeter mine was worth developing. Now she had brought a lot more food for him. Could it be that the Count is also an upright person? This is a little troublesome. List was a little restless. If the Count's family did not care about him, then he could easily maintain a gentlemanly friendship and live his life leisurely. What he feared the most was a familial entanglement. List did not know how to deal with it. Should he integrate into this familial affection according to his current identity, or should he maintain his personality and continue to keep his distance? Is this the fetters of familial affection? As long as one is human, one cannot escape this net. After drinking the red wine, List decided to stop thinking about this troublesome matter and let nature take its course. He did not take the initiative and did not refuse. He shook off his thoughts and asked, "Mr. Carter, have you delivered the seafood as a gift to Tulip Castle?" "I have handed it over to Mr. Silva. They are all first-rate dried seafood." "Very good. Courtesy demands reciprocity." List put down the wine glass. Carter also drank the red wine, put away the 2 glasses and bowed slightly. "Master, rest early. I wish you a good night. I will take my leave first." "Good night, Mr. Carter. Sweet dreams." The next few days were monotonous and uneventful. In addition to supervising the logging work, List was also paying attention to another matter: the training of the fruit-stealing monkeys. At first, 7 fruit-stealing monkeys who were not seriously injured were caught alive and recovered. However, 2 of them were lame and could no longer climb trees. The remaining 5 were given to the town's hunters for training. Ropes, whips, and fruits were used together. Very soon, the unruly fruit-stealing monkeys were tamed. They climbed trees and entered cages. 3 female monkeys and 4 male monkeys. I believe that there will be 10 fruit-stealing monkeys in the second half of the year. Monkeys generally gave birth to 2 babies a year, but each one usually gave birth to 1 baby. List looked at the increasingly obedient fruit-stealing monkeys and was very satisfied. Without the destruction of the fruit-stealing monkeys, this year's fragrant coconuts can ripen. I believe that after a month or 2, we will be able to drink fresh and sweet coconut juice. Fragrant coconuts had no seasonal characteristics. Except for winter, they would bear fruit continuously in other seasons. The Coral City does not seem to have fragrant coconuts for sale. Perhaps, it will become a major specialty of the flower town. Unfortunately, it has not bred a fragrant coconut sprite worm. While he was outlining the future of the fragrant coconut tree, the hunters had already begun to train the fruit-stealing monkeys to pick the fruits. The fake fruits were tied to branches for the fruit-stealing monkeys to pick. If they picked the fruits, they would be rewarded with a peanut. If they didn't pick the fruits, they would be whipped. The fruit-stealing monkeys could not run away due to the ropes tied around their necks. If they dared to run, they would be whipped. Remember, animals can also bear grudges and throw tantrums. As long as they work hard, don't whip them at will. If I find you whipping the fruit-stealing monkeys for no reason, then I will whip you. He emphasized with a serious expression. He did not want the fruit-stealing monkeys to rebel in the future and smash a few fruit farmers to death. Sir Lord, please rest assured. We will not forget what you have instructed us to do. The part-time hunters understood that they would henceforth change from farmers to fruit farmers. They were all elated to use the fruit-stealing monkeys for work. If it was not for the sake of training, List would be reluctant to whip them. For fruit farmers, the fruit-stealing monkeys were like knights' horses. After saying goodbye to the fruit-stealing monkeys, List returned to the castle and called over the few merchants among the new serfs. Old Grandette, Sherlock, Harpagon, are you all merchants on the Smallkerchief Island? List repeated his question. Yes, Sir Lord. Is there a merchant on the Smallkerchief Island called Plushkin? Old Grandette replied, Sir Lord, there are only the 3 of us who specialize in peddling small goods on the Smallkerchief Island. Moreover, I know the names of everyone in the city, but there is no one called Plushkin. Chapter 77. List did not intend to let the fief's residents establish a caravan of their own. He intended to establish a caravan exclusive to the castle. Without the drive and idea of reform and innovation, he would establish a free trade system. He would just operate his fief in accordance with the practices of the majority of aristocrats. Old Grandette was elected as the caravan's leader. Harpagon and Sherlock assisted him from the side. At present, the only thing you can operate is seafood. Starting from the Coral City, I hope that the Flower Town seafood can be gradually sold in all cities," said List. "As you wish, Sir Lord. So, how do you plan to sell seafood? This is a new thing. Ordinary people who have never eaten it would obviously be afraid of it." Old Grandette pondered for a moment before replying, "Sir Lord, we can advertise on the streets that even Sir Count is full of praise for seafood. I believe that there will be countless subjects who will flock to the food praised by Sir Count." This was using celebrities to hype things up. It was not creative, but it was very useful. Sherlock added a little to Old Grandette's method. "You can first contact the kitchens of most aristocrats and send them some seafood for free so that they can taste it. The Coral City has a large number of freedmen, who are also potential buyers of seafood. We can set up stalls on the streets and cook seafood for free so that the passing freedmen can taste it. I believe that before long, everyone in the Coral City will know how delicious seafood is," Harpagon suggested. List felt that both methods were very good. "It seems that you already have a complete business plan. Once the road to the Thorns Ridge is opened, you can start doing business." Old Grandette hesitated for a moment before saying, "Sir Lord, we do not have carriages, so how will we transport seafood to the Coral City? After the road is opened, I will buy a few carriages as soon as possible." List pondered and said, "There were still 16 gold coins in the castle. Generally, a carriage with a shed to pull goods cost 1 gold coin. He could buy 6, but no more as there were not enough horses to pull the carriages." After seeing off Old Grandette and the other two, List sighed slightly. He had thought that the castle's gold coins were enough, but now he found that it was not enough at all. 500 serfs cost him 120 gold coins. If he wanted the town to reach the size of 5,000 people, he would have to prepare at least 600 gold coins. If he wanted the town to reach the size of 10,000 people, he would need nearly 2,000 gold coins. "How about I sell the red blood sword to Levis or Captain Mickey? If it's too expensive, they won't be able to afford it. 1,000 gold coins should be enough, right?" However, when he grasped the red blood sword hanging at his waist, the warm magical power made him unable to make such a decision. It was a gemstone weapon. The gemstones produced by dragons represented power. Moreover, it matched his Dochi attribute. Even if he became a Sky Knight in the future, this red blood sword would still be worthy of his identity. I can only develop it slowly. I hope that this year the Flower Town will have a bumper harvest by relying on the compost. Coupled with the sprite worms that I brought and the sprite worms that were born on their own, next quarter's tax revenue should be able to exceed 15 gold coins, right? This quarter's tax revenue had already been handed over to the castle. After careful calculation, Isaiah estimated that the various crops and handicrafts harvested in this spring season were worth about 7 gold coins. In previous years, the spring tax revenue was generally about 3 gold coins. In the winter, there was almost no tax revenue, about 4 gold coins in the summer, about 7 gold coins in the autumn, and less than 15 gold coins in the whole year. This year, with the sprite worms relying on the compost for the fields and fishing for seafood, List was confident that the summer tax revenue could reach last year's level. In the autumn, the tax revenue would definitely be higher, and it would not be impossible to surpass Li Weiwei's Falcon Town. "Master, your milk tea is ready." The butler Carter walked into the study with a cup of milk tea brewed with fresh milk. It was List's habit to drink a cup of milk tea before going to bed every day. "Thank you." After receiving the milk tea, List, who was a little thirsty, drank half of the milk tea with just the right temperature in one gulp. He licked the milk tea foam from the corner of his lips and said with some hesitation, "Mr. Carter, is today's milk tea still brewed by Mrs. Morrison?" "Yes, master." "Is there a problem with today's milk tea?" Carter became a little nervous. List shook his head. "There is no problem with the brewing. However, I feel that Mrs. Morrison's craftsmanship is getting better and better, and the milk tea is getting better and better. I will pass on your compliment to Mrs. Mawson. I'm sure she will be very pleased." On the first day of July, the afternoon sun was lazily shining. Clouds would cover the sun from time to time, like a naughty child quietly blinding his friend. The weather was not too hot, and there was still a breeze blowing. List, who was inspecting the logging work, stood on the other side of the Thorns Ridge. With a handsome smile on his face, he solemnly announced, "The trees 100 meters away from both sides of the road have all been chopped down. The logging team has completed my task. As the Lord, I would like to express my respect to you." Respect was just lip service. Next, it was up to the commoners to continue working. The opening of the road to the Thorns Ridge means that the flower town will be connected with the outside world. It will no longer be isolated in a corner of the Coral Island. Anyone can go out and take a look. However, in order to further strengthen the road's safety, the fences must be completed. After a pause, he continued, therefore the logging team will not be disbanded for the time being. Instead, the fences will be built and the woods on both sides of the Thorns Ridge will be completely isolated from the fences. The wood needed for the fences was locally sourced. There was a large amount of wood that had been cut and thrown on the ground. The best wood was transported to the castle for storage, the second best wood was taken to build the oyster settlement's dwellings, the second best wood was used for the fences, and the leftovers were taken back by the commoners to cook. The opening of the road was a moment worth celebrating. List gathered Gort, Marcus, Isaiah, and Blair and arranged the following tasks. The first was, of course, the issue of the caravan. After purchasing the carriages, they would immediately start selling seafood. The second was the issue of purchasing. List was going to take out the last 10 gold coins to purchase a batch of food that was in short supply, including hops and beer. The third was to publicize to the Coral Island's various cities that they could freely enter and exit the flower town. The castle's caravan was responsible for the large transactions that List had instructed them to do. Under normal circumstances, it would not involve too much trade between commoners. The arrival of foreign caravans into the flower town would enliven the small town's atmosphere and bring about the circulation of wealth and daily necessities. Finally, there is one more thing that needs to be noted. The flower town will welcome freedmen to settle down by lowering taxes. Be sure to spread this news to the various cities. List was now eager to increase his population. He really did not care about the little bit of taxes. The development of the fief was his first priority. The few of them were busy carefully writing down List's instructions. Marcus suddenly said, "Sir, I am going to take a day off and bring my family to live in the flower town." After hearing this, Isaiah heaved a long sigh. "I am afraid that my stupid son is not willing to come to the flower town. He is used to messing around in the Coral City." Blair said cheerfully, "Then I will also bring my family over. Life here is a bit monotonous but the air is fragrant." Gort smiled awkwardly. "List, I also want to bring my family over, but Freja is pregnant. I can't handle it." List said solemnly, "Teacher Gort, although keeping a mistress outside is a common problem of aristocrats who boast of being dissolute, but it is still immoral. I have no intention of advising you to stop immediately. Besides, Freja is pregnant. Therefore, in the flower town you can treat Freja as your wife." After pondering for a moment, he said again, "If her child is a boy, then I hope that he can become my retainer knight in the future." "Your generosity makes me ashamed, sir. Gort is willing to serve you." Gort stood up, walked up to List and solemnly saluted. Chapter 78. Mission completed. Reward, a new variety of mushrooms. Mission. As a knight, one not only needs courage and wisdom, but also enough life-saving ability to display the greatest significance of life. Please learn Marcus' complete set of archery. Reward, black pearls from the deep sea. After the logging work on the Thorns Ridge passage was completed, the smoke mission was updated in time. A new variety of mushrooms was apparently growing somewhere in the Shiitake settlement and was about to be discovered. List had enough patience to wait. Black pearls from the deep sea, what are they? He was somewhat confused. However, pearls on the market were not cheap. They were relatively popular accessories for aristocrats. Black pearls should be more valuable and could be sold for a lot of money. Recently, he had been so poor that he could hardly afford to pay his wages. He was thinking about money like crazy. Learning archery from Marcus was a plan that was put on the agenda a long time ago. Starting tomorrow, I will officially learn archery. Tomorrow doesn't seem to be possible. Marcus has to go to the Coral City to pick up his family. Let's start the day after tomorrow. First, have the caravan go to Tulip Castle and help me buy a bow and arrows. On the Coral Island, only a few aristocratic families were allowed to sell weapons. List, on the other hand, didn't need to go to Tulip Castle to buy one. After all, he was a direct descendant of the Tulip family. Early the next morning, under the leadership of Old Grandet, the newly formed Flower Town's caravan, consisting of 3 merchants, 6 coachmen, and 7 assistants, set off for the Coral City with the castle's 6 old horses. On the backs of each batch of horses, there were a few packets of seafood as well as a few pots and firewood. This was for cooking seafood on the spot. Riding his yellow-gray horse, Marcus followed the caravan and escorted it in passing. The Knight Squad's training course was temporarily handed over to Retainer Knight Karl Hammerstein. He was the only Retainer Knight who already had a sense of Qi and was about to cultivate Qi. As for the other 3 Retainer Knight, there was no sign of Qi so far. As for the Knight Squad, the youngsters had eaten their fill during this time and trained hard. Their muscles had already begun to bulge. Philip Wool and Xavier Cao Deng, who had the best physiques and had reached the standards of Knight Academy, had already begun to sense Qi and could cultivate Qi at any time. Blair also went with the caravan to pick up his family and settled down in the Flower Town. Gort and Isaiah, whose families were unwilling or inconvenient to come, continued to maintain the town's administrative operations. There was still a lot of work to be done. The roads were still being repaired, the oyster settlement's houses were still being built, the wasteland was still being reclaimed, and a new and important work had also begun to be planned. Teacher Gort, Isaiah, the town needs to be reorganized. Probably tomorrow Marcus and Blair's families will arrive. Arrange for their accommodation as soon as possible. They're all big families, so they can't continue to live in the administrative office. Don't worry, sir. I've already considered this last night. I've already rented 2 houses next to the administrative office for Marcus and Blair's families to stay temporarily. Gort's tone became more and more respectful. He had already followed List for the sake of his upcoming illegitimate child. Following List meant that he had become List's subject. It was no longer just an equal relationship of nobility and the friendship between teacher and student. I'm glad that you've thought of things ahead of me. List was satisfied with Gort's current attitude. Then let's continue with the town's plan. In about 3 months, a group of 500 serfs and freedmen will settle down in the Flower Town. The settlements will have to build more houses and the town will have to be expanded. Gort already knew that List wanted to sell slaves. He asked directly, how will this group of commoners be distributed? How many serfs will there be? If nothing unexpected happens, there will be 400 serfs to supplement the settlement's farming. There will be 100 freedmen, most of whom are craftsmen. As appropriate, some workshops will be planned in the town. A simple map of the town was spread out. List drew a horizontal line with his finger on the original only street and said, we will build another road so that the town is laid out in the shape of a cross. This is not a small project. 3 months may not be enough. Let's build it first. List was not an expert. He could not accurately budget and long-term planning. He often did what he thought of, the streets must be spacious. The 4 areas of the cross will be divided into the east, south, west, and north. The west will be planned as a commercial area. Later, the exchange and food market will be built. The development of the social system in this world was very backward. The cities were more like densely packed dilapidated houses with no concept of a planned area. But List was not willing to do this. The south will be planned as a workshop area. Later, mills, slaughterhouses, and blacksmiths will be moved to this area. The north will be a serf residential area and the east will be a free residential area. In addition, further west of the commercial area near the castle, will be planned as an aristocratic residential area. It was very immoral to divide people into different classes. But this was the social system. It was impossible for aristocrats to live with commoners, and freedmen and serfs could not be in the same pot. After carefully thinking about List's words, Gort couldn't help but exclaim, Sir, your idea is really unique. It has opened my mind. It turns out that a city can be built in this way. In this way, no matter how far away a merchant is, they will still be able to find a place to do business. Isaiah was a little slow, but after listening to Gort's explanation, he also understood the benefits of urban planning. It is also an eye-opener for me. The Flower Town will become a pearl of the Coral Island. List smiled slightly. Most importantly, more toilets must be built. I don't want to see anyone urinating and defecating in the town, even if it is a 3-year-old child. Immediately after, he added, hang signs in every shop, hang conspicuous signs in every toilet, and set up signs at the entrances to the roads. No matter who comes to the Flower Town in the future, they must abide by the rule of not urinating and defecating anywhere. He had a deep feeling about this, because just a few days ago, during the Out to the Sea festival, the Count's accompanying knight had defecated more than a dozen times in the vicinity of his castle at noon. For many knights this was a normal thing. If they wanted to defecate they would do it. But List didn't allow it. He didn't want to stroll in the horse field and accidentally step on a pile of feces. As natives, Gort and Isaiah didn't care about this. They had done things like urinating and defecating everywhere before. but Liszt had already ordered them to do so. They nodded in agreement. Sir, please rest assured. We will give top priority to the town's hygiene. Liszt suddenly remembered something. By the way, Isaiah, my night squad's youngsters are illiterate. I hope to hire you as the night squad's teacher to teach them common words. At the very least, they must be able to read. There was no night college in the flower town, so he could only hire teachers. Chapter 79. The caravan did not return at night. Instead, it waited until noon the next day before returning to the flower town. 2 of the 6 carriages were full of goods, while the other 4 carried Marcus and Blair's family members. The 6 horses were exhausted and the single carriage was a bit overloaded. Sir. Marcus dismounted and saluted. Soon, a large group of people alighted from the carriages behind him. Teacher Marcus, if I remember correctly, you don't have so many family members, do you? Liszt carefully counted. Marcus's family alone had 22 people. My 2 elder sisters and their family are also willing to follow me to the flower town to settle down. Marcus replied, they live in poverty in the Coral City, mainly because they have too many children. Even though I often provide them with financial assistance, it is still difficult for them to have enough to eat and wear. Liszt nodded. He always welcomed people. Soon after, Blair's family also saluted him. Blair's family wasn't that large, just his wife and 4 children. His eldest son had just been married and had yet to have children. Liszt had Gort settle down the 2 families. Only then did Liszt begin to inquire about the caravan's business. Old Grandette said nervously, Sir, not many portions of seafood were sold. Half of it was given to the Coral City citizens as free food. In fact, many of the citizens who had tasted seafood said that it was delicious. However, one person who had eaten seafood had red spots all over his body, vomiting and having diarrhea, which led to the citizens' fear of seafood. Harpagon added, If the patrol hadn't heard that the caravan belonged to you, Sir Lord, then I'm afraid that all of our goods would have been confiscated. Allergic to seafood? Liszt mused. Some people were indeed allergic to seafood. However, none of the flower town's residents were allergic to seafood. This made him believe that people would not be allergic to the other world's seafood. He didn't expect that there would be people allergic to seafood. It is indeed unexpected. However, you don't have to feel pressured. Very few people will have physical problems due to eating seafood. However, this is only a small minority. Once a problem arises, immediately stop and recover. Next time you sell seafood, remember to make it clear. Yes, Sir Lord. Have you purchased all the things I need? Thick bast paper, dried milk powder, hops, beer, red wine? Everything has been purchased, but the pig pancreas you needed, we were unable to buy it. The few slaughterhouses in Coral City do not keep pig pancreas. I've already contacted them and asked them to keep the pig pancreas as much as possible. We'll buy it next time. Pig pancreas is used to make pancreas, which is also used to make soap. The castle now used soap powder, a kind of powder ground from the fruit of the honey locust tree. There were soap makers among the new serfs, who could add flower petals to the soap powder and make soap. However, the production of soap was very complicated. The soap maker, Burnell, did not have the equipment and had yet to make the soap. Therefore, Liszt hoped to make his own pancreas. After old Grandette reported the situation, he prepared to hand over the money to Liszt. Of course, Liszt would not accept it with his hands. It would be beneath his status. Liszt picked up the cup on the table and said lightly, Mr. Carter, you and old Grandette will be responsible for the castle's purchases in the future. As you wish, master. Carter accepted the task without hesitation. Marcus's family and Blair's family had dinner in the castle. Liszt no longer asked about their arrangements and directly left it to Gort. As a lord, his most important job was to enjoy himself. Master, there is a small matter in the Shiitake settlement. I don't know if you are interested in hearing it. While Mrs. Morrison was cleaning the study with Maggie, she said to Liszt, who was reading a night novel to pass the time. Shiitake settlement? Liszt instantly thought of his mission reward, a new variety of mushrooms. What happened in the Shiitake settlement? Most of the shiitake used in the castle is picked from Crooked Neck Bob's house. His family's shiitake is the most tender. But these days Bob is often frowning. On the shelf where he grows shiitake, a kind of bright red shiitake grows. When he shovels a batch, another batch will grow. Before he finished, Liszt immediately stood up from his chair and walked out of the study without looking back. He shouted upstairs, Thomas, prepare the horse. Thomas, who was about to sleep, hurriedly ran out of the room and hurriedly prepared the horse. Carter also quickly walked over. "Master, do you have something important to do tonight?" "It's very important. I have to go to the Shiitake settlement. Send someone to inform Gort." He suddenly remembered something. He turned to the housekeeper in the study and said, "Mrs. Morrison, come with me. Lead the way to Crooked Neck Bob's house." A moment later, Thomas prepared the horse. He lit a torch and walked under the moonlight towards the Shiitake settlement. The manservant Jesse rode a horse to the town and called Gort and List's 4 retainer knight to meet up with List in the Shiitake settlement. The Shiitake settlement was noisy for a while. Crooked Neck Bob was extremely nervous. Mrs. Morrison knocked on the door and told him that the Sir Lord wanted to go to his Shiitake shed. He thought that there was a problem with his Shiitake, and that the Sir Lord was going to hold him accountable. As a serf, he was responsible for farming for the Lord. If he did not do well, he would be whipped. "Bob, don't be nervous. Master is merciful. You didn't make a deliberate mistake, he won't punish you easily." "Mrs. Morrison, is this true?" "You must help me plead with the Sir Lord, please, please." Bob was still nervous. At this time, List was already in his Shiitake shed. Thomas followed closely with a torch. "Master, what are you looking for?" "I've found what I'm looking for." List's pupils rotated like whirlpools, and a little bit of starlight seemed to twinkle in the deep and boundless universe. In his field of vision, there were several pieces of rotten shiitake wood, which had traces of light red magic power, outlining the shapes of mushrooms. He dispersed his magic eyes. By the light of the fire he saw what was emitting magic power. It was a bright red mushroom. It looked a bit like a red mushroom, dotted in the middle of a large field of shiitake. It was obvious that the surrounding shiitake had withered, except for this red mushroom, which looked very fresh and bright. It really is a magic ingredient mushroom. List wanted to laugh out loud because the magic power of this mushroom is red. This is a color that only fire-attributed magic power can have. I am a fire-attributed warrior chi. This red mushroom is a great tonic for me. The Sky Knight was basically a medicine pot. Without a lot of magic ingredients, it was difficult to rely on his own body to attack a higher realm of chi. "Thomas, have Mrs. Morrison bring Bob over." When Bob stood nervously in front of him, he smiled and said, "Are you Bob? Don't be nervous." Bob was so scared that he knelt down and kept kowtowing. "Sir Lord, I made a mistake, I spoiled the shiitake ingredients, Sir Lord, please forgive me." Chapter 80. Crooked Neck Bob was so excited that he couldn't sleep all night. Not only did Sir Lord not blame him, but he was even rewarded with 10 silver coins. This was simply like a pie falling from the sky. Moreover, Sir Lord also told him to find a way to expand the planting area of the red mushrooms. Sir Lord had given them a name, flame mushrooms. It would be best if all the shiitake were replaced with flame mushrooms. The more they were planted, the more rewards they would receive in the future. Quiet. The tomato settlement's Johann received a gold coin as a reward from Sir Lord. His wife couldn't bear to see Bob getting too excited and couldn't help but pour cold water on him. Bob didn't care in the slightest. "What do you know? It is only a reward of 10 silver coins because Sir Lord wants me to figure out the planting ingredients for the flame mushrooms. I, Bob, am the best at planting shiitake in the shiitake settlement. As long as I figure out the ingredients, Sir Lord said that there will be more rewards." He had a longing look on his face. It will definitely be more than Johann's 1 gold coin. Perhaps, it will be 2 gold coins? Heavens, what a wonderful moment. I have 2 gold coins. However, you have to figure out the ingredients first. If you don't, then Sir Lord might take back the 10 silver coins and whip you. Of course I will figure it out, I will figure it out. Of course, Bob wouldn't be the only one to figure out the planting ingredients for the flame mushrooms. List had already consulted with Gort, who had hurried over, to gather all the shiitake planting experts in the shiitake settlement to figure it out together. Whoever could figure out the recipe of the ingredients would be rewarded. List didn't have many gold coins left, but he wasn't stingy. He wanted to use the magic of money to arouse the subjects' enthusiasm for exploring new things, rather than continuing to lifelessly repeat the farming methods of the older generation. "Teacher Gort, the planting ingredients for the flame mushrooms will be classified as the Flower Town's top secret and must not be divulged to anyone. Henceforth, all places where the flame mushrooms are planted will be classified as restricted areas. Only with the castle's authorization can one enter and exit these areas," List said solemnly. Ordinary plant magic ingredients required sprite worms to coordinate with them, which were very difficult to replicate. For example, the magic tulip could only be grown by the tulip family. Even if an outsider stole the seed without the tulip elves to cultivate it, it would degenerate into a normal tulip in less than 1 or 2 generations. Mushroom potions, on the other hand, were different. They could be multiplied continuously. Once the spores and ingredients were stolen by outsiders, they could be cultivated on a large scale with a little research. Gort understood the importance of this matter. Sir, please rest assured. I will discuss with Isaiah a set of confidential plans to ensure that there is no possibility of the slightest possibility of the cultivation method of the flame mushrooms being leaked. You have to be more careful. This is a magic ingredient mushroom. You can't pay too much attention to it. Understood. Gort nodded and then sighed with emotion. In a short period of time, the flower town has changed greatly. 2 sprite worms and 2 magic ingredients have been born. This land is definitely blessed by the night's glory. My lord, you must be the successor of the night's glory. The glory of the night was a slogan that the nobles loved to say. This world had a very medieval style, yet it had not developed a religion that ruled over almost everything. This was probably because humans could cultivate themselves and reach the realm of invincible experts, free from disease and calamity. Therefore they were dismissive of God, and even had the feeling that, I am God. The nobles only believed in the glory of the night. The cultivation of Qi, continuously becoming a more powerful knight, could bring them everything. Of course, there were also exceptions. Wizards definitely did not believe in the glory of the night. Reportedly, they believed in knowledge. List calmly looked at the clear moonlight. If there really was a night's glory, then he believed that he was indeed blessed by the night's glory, giving him a wonderful life experience. I hope to ride a dragon one day. Marcus arrived at the castle early. Starting today, he would teach List archery. My archery is called multiple arrows, an advanced extension of fundamental archery. It focuses on the control of multiple arrows, not the power of the arrows. My lord does not have the foundation of archery, so you cannot learn multiple arrows for the time being. You must first start with fundamental archery. Saying so, he handed over a bundle of arrows. This is? List had bought a bow from Tulip Castle, a hard bow suitable for an earth knight, and also 100 birch arrows. The arrows are made from the feathers of the winged peregrine falcon and oak from the thorn's ridge. The falcon feather arrows are all handmade by me, a total of 24 arrows. Among them, there are 6 falcon tail arrows made from the tail feathers of the winged peregrine falcon. In order to distinguish them, I drew a red circle on the arrow shafts. The falcon tail arrows are more balanced than the falcon feather arrows. Marcus somewhat regretfully said, unfortunately, most of the feathers of the winged peregrine falcon were destroyed by the monkeys. Otherwise, a large number of falcon feather arrows could be made, which are much better than the ordinary bird feather arrows on the market. The fine magic power on the feathers can make the arrows fly faster and more steadily. The winged peregrine falcon, after fighting with the monkeys, had all of its feathers scratched off. Then List used a big move, burning a lot of its feathers. Being able to repair and make 24 falcon feather arrows was already not easy. However, List didn't take the falcon feather arrows. I still haven't learned archery, so I can't use the falcon feather arrows for the time being. Teacher Marcus, keep them. When we clean up World of Warcraft in the Thorn's Ridge, we will need to rely on Teacher Marcus's accurate archery. Marcus didn't decline. Yes, my lord. Next was teaching time. As a sharpshooter, Marcus had a very deep understanding of archery, and his teaching method was also very clear. List quickly immersed himself in learning archery. As an Earth Knight, his physical constitution was very tough. He could continuously shoot arrows, which was much more convenient than ordinary people learning archery. The smoke mission is for me to learn Marcus's complete set of archery. In other words, just learning the basic archery isn't enough, I also have to learn the multiple arrows. I have to speed up my learning, otherwise this mission will take too long. For this reason, List even suspended his Qi cultivation. He wholeheartedly immersed himself in archery. As a result, on the horse field outside the castle, there was a constantly galloping shadow. That was List constantly shooting arrows on horseback, shooting at various erected targets. He learned very quickly. After a day he could already stand still and shoot at the bullseye. 9 out of 10 arrows could hit the 7 or 8 ring position. The Earth Knight's mastery of the body could quickly strengthen his muscle memory, allowing him to figure out how to shoot more accurately. After 2 days he could already hit the target 5 out of 10 arrows on horseback. On the 4th day, List continued to go to the horse field, preparing to practice archery on horseback. However, a shameful act occurred on the horse field. Black Dragon rode on Fiery Dragon for about 4 minutes before it dismounted and pretended to be leisurely, lowering its head to graze. Chapter 81. Black Dragon was a dragon stallion. In order to develop the Black Dragon herd, the quality of the maras could not be too poor. Fiery Dragon was the most suitable breeding partner. However, there was only one Fiery Dragon. Therefore, horses that could go to the battlefield could be used as breeding partners. Marcus Mount, the yellow-gray horse, was a horse breed that could go to the battlefield, but it was a stallion. Gort, Isaiah, and Blair's horses could go to the battlefield. Furthermore, they were maras. Maras generally did not go to the battlefield as they were more docile. They were suitable for aristocrats or aristocratic descendants who did not love the battlefield. I think we will soon have no horses to ride on. Gort looked at his mount, which was being whipped to its heart's content by Black Dragon. It was unknown what expression he had on his face. Most importantly, the mare clearly hadn't entered the estrus period. Black Dragon had forced himself on her. This was List's bad taste. His mount, Fiery Dragon, had already been defiled by Black Dragon. Naturally, other people's mounts could not be spared. There was a smile on Marcus's face. It was unknown whether he was gloating over Gort's misfortune, or looking forward to the future of the Flower Town's horses. He simply said, "Even pregnant maras can be ridden for about 11 months. You can ride them before 7 months, but after 7 months, you have to reduce the number of times you can ride them. Additionally, they should not gallop for long distances as it will increase the risk of miscarriage." Marcus knew horses very well. However, he was not the one who knew horses the best in the Flower Town. The one who knew horses the best was the serf from the Smallkerchief Island, One-Eyed Barton. He had once transported horses for the Smallkerchief family, traveled north and south, drank water from behind a toilet, and had seen many kinds of horses. "Sir Lord, I have never seen a horse more spirited than Black Dragon. It must have an extraordinary bloodline." One-Eyed Barton was about 45 years old, had a thick beard and was blind in one eye. In order to examine his expertise, List had him identify Black Dragon. "Then what lineage do you think it has?" "I've seen horses with low-level World of Warcraft bloodline. The fire dragon that Sir Lord often rides is of low-level World of Warcraft bloodline. I've seen a hybrid between a dark demonic horse and an ordinary horse in World of Warcraft. It was a new breed bred in a horse farm in the Blast Castle Kingdom." While speaking, Barton shook his head, "But that breed of horse is not as spirited as Black Dragon. It is taller than Black Dragon, but its eyes and spirit are lacking. That's why I'm guessing that its mixed bloodline is even higher than Intermediate World of Warcraft, or Advanced World of Warcraft, I'm not sure." He already had a very high estimation of Black Dragon's bloodline, but there was still a gap. This was a dragon horse. List didn't plan on saying it out loud. He had to keep a low profile, so he asked One-Eyed Barton a few more questions about horses. One-Eyed Barton's answers were clear and logical. So he directly said, "Barton, tell me your surname." One-Eyed Barton's complexion darkened. "Sir Lord, Barton used to be an orphan without a surname. I was raised by a horse dealer. Later, Lord Smallkerchief bought Barton from the Blast Castle Kingdom, and I've been selling horses for Lord Smallkerchief." "Is that so?" List nodded. "Have you ever been married?" "No." Not married meant that it didn't matter if he had a surname or not. If he married and had descendants, he would have to pass it on. At that time, Barton would probably change his name to One-Eyed Barton. "In that case, you don't have to plow the fields. I'm hiring you as the castle's groom. You'll be responsible for managing the horse farm and taking care of the castle's horses." Barton happily kowtowed. Barton will definitely take good care of Sir's horse farm. Groom not only meant raising horses, but also a servant of the castle. As long as he didn't make any mistakes, he wouldn't have to worry about food and clothing. In the aristocratic system, servants were a very important link. They shouldered all the castle's work and maintained the castle's internal operations. Basically, servants could be divided into 5 categories: upstairs servants, retainer knight, downstairs servants, kitchen servants, and outdoor servants. Upstairs servants included tutors, family doctors, and elderly noblemen's attendants. They generally didn't live in the castle, but they could eat with the noblemen upstairs. Retainer knight included squires who did odd jobs on the battlefield and squires who fought together with the noblemen. They had their own families. Downstairs servants included housekeepers, manservants, and maids. They were the castle's main staff and lived downstairs. Kitchen servants included servants who worked in the kitchen. In addition, there were outdoor servants. This was a general term because it included groom, coachman, forest protector, hunter protector, gatekeeper, gardener, and so on. They generally lived in independent houses outside the castle. Usually they didn't work in the castle. Instead, they raised horses, raised flowers, hunted, and so on. If it was a great noble, the servants would be further subdivided. In the hall, there were concierge, caterer, bartender, laundry servant, housekeeper, personal room servant, secretary, clothing servant, horse trainer, dog trainer, funny clown, zither player, drummer, flute player, and so on. In short, as long as the nobleman needed it, they could hire a servant for anything. For commoners, becoming a servant was something worth mentioning. Compared to serfs, servants obviously enjoyed a better life and did lighter work. Moreover, between noblemen, servant relationships were established. It was common for lesser noblemen to become servants of greater noblemen. For example, Gort, as a down-and-out lord knight, was List's tutor. Even the Earl of Coral Island, the Sky Knight who held the power of life and death on the island, was proud to be a groom for the Sapphire Grand Duke. The longer List lived in the small town's castle, the more he felt that there was no equality between people. Take care of Black Dragon first, Barton. It has been working very hard recently, and I don't want to see it tired out on a certain mare one day. List looked at Black Dragon, who worked hard day and night, and said solemnly. Barton carefully observed Black Dragon's teeth through the gap between its mouth. It is still a young horse, so it is normal to be a little restless. Now that the weather is getting hotter and hotter, its estrus will gradually weaken over time. However, the number of times it copulates with each mare has to be divided. First of all, ensure that Fiery Dragon gets pregnant. Understood, Master. Barton quickly played the role of a groom and called List Master. In order to get Fiery Dragon pregnant as soon as possible, List no longer planned to ride Black Dragon or Fiery Dragon. He switched to an ordinary horse and continued to practice archery. In mid-July, when he could move quickly while riding an ordinary horse, he hit all the targets one by one and didn't deviate too far from the bullseye. Marcus announced that he had officially graduated from the basic archery and could start practicing the multiple arrows. At the very most, he had only learned it for a week. Therefore, he was very confident in learning the multiple arrows, and expected to completely master it by the time August arrived. Master your ice cream. Thomas brought over a cup of fragrant ice cream. List, who was still diligently practicing archery in the hot weather, picked up the ice cream and ate it in big mouthfuls. A cool feeling spread from head to toe, and the comfortable taste was wonderful. If he didn't have the help of ice cream, cold beer, and cold juice, he would never practice archery in the middle of summer. Fortunately, the mining of the super-small saltpeter mine had already been completed, and they had obtained a total of 300 kilograms of saltpeter, which was enough to produce enough ice for the castle to use every day. At night, List would put a few pieces of ice in his study and bedroom to cool down. Chapter 82. Multiple Arrows didn't have any combat energy training content, so it wasn't a combat energy secret manual, but it was a combat energy technique. A knight of any attribute could practice it. It was divided into 3 levels: double arrows, triple arrows, and multiple arrows, as well as an ultimate move, multiple phantom arrows. Marcus, riding the yellow-gray horse, carefully demonstrated the multiple arrows that he had practiced, and then explained each arrow in conjunction with it. There are 5 ways to use double arrows. The most common one I use is double arrows at the same time, which is to simply shoot 2 arrows and hit one target. The second is double arrows cross, which is to shoot 2 arrows side by side and use magic to guide the impact, thus changing the direction in the air. The remaining double arrows spiral, double arrows chain, and double arrows rapid arrows aren't very practical. It was indeed difficult to control the horse and the arrows while riding on a horse. So what Marcus meant was that as long as one was proficient in double arrows at the same time and double arrows cross, they could already be called a godly archer and would be invincible on the battlefield. As for the other archery techniques, they could only be effective while standing on the ground and carefully practicing them. He continued, triple arrow is basically an advanced version of double arrow. 3 arrows in unison, 3 arrows in spiral, 3 arrows in chain, 3 arrows in rapid release, and 3 arrows in random release. The theory is the same, but the control requirements are higher. The same goes for multiple arrows. Multiple arrows at the same time, spiral shadow arrows, multiple arrows chain, multiple arrows random arrows, and multiple arrows cross require more control. After stopping the horse, Marcus could use triple arrows and multiple arrows one by one. After emptying the quiver, he shook his head, not satisfied with his archery skills. I can master triple arrows while standing still, but not multiple arrows. It's too difficult. There's also the ultimate move, multiple phantom arrows. I need at least a quarter of an hour to prepare this move before I dare to use it. A person's hand. Holding one arrow was very stable, holding two arrows was not bad, and holding three arrows was also fine, just enough space for 3 fingers to hold one arrow each. But holding more arrows was not possible. One had to hold 2 arrows between fingers, which was very difficult, not to mention that one had to allocate magic to guide each arrow. The Earth Knight's control of combat energy could not be so subtle. The squire plucked the arrows off the target one by one and handed them back to Marcus. Marcus let out a long sigh, trying to ease his tense emotions. Sir, it's already hard for me to control more than 3 multi-arrows. Now, it's even harder to control the ultimate profoundness. That's why I broke it down into 2 shots, 3 arrows each, which can barely achieve the effect recorded in multiple arrows. He pulled out 3 arrows from the quiver. The first 3 arrows use a gentle force, allowing the arrows to be thrown out at a low speed. The last 3 arrows use a violent force, allowing the arrows to be thrown out at a high speed and collide with the first 3 arrows. Thus, the speed of the 6 arrows reaches the same, and their trajectories are disrupted like phantoms. After that, he opened his mouth and bit down on the 3 arrows, then pulled out another 3 arrows and fired. The moment he let go, the 3 arrows flew upwards. He quickly put the 3 arrows in his mouth into his hand and once again drew the bow. This time, the bowstring was almost pulled into a full moon, and the moment the arrow was released, there was a violent whistling sound. Shio. 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 In midair, the 3 fast arrows flew in a flat trajectory, colliding with the arrows in front of them. In an instant, the 6 arrows spun in the air. Looking at it with the naked eye, it was as if dozens of arrows had suddenly appeared, randomly shooting at the 3 targets. Before Liszt could even blink, the phantoms dispersed, leaving only 6 arrows which hit the target in the middle. 5 of the arrows stuck straight into the target, but one brushed past the target and flew out. I still can't completely grasp the trajectories of the 6 arrows, Marcus said with some disappointment. But Liszt applauded. Teacher Marcus, your archery skills are already amazing. Let's quickly start practicing. I can't wait to use multi-phantom arrows. In reality, he felt a little bitter in his heart. Marcus's archery skills were simply unfathomable. He originally thought that it was just a routine of 2 or 3 arrows, and he just needed to learn it casually. But now he discovered that without being proficient in double arrow and triple arrow, he might not be able to learn multi-arrow, let alone the ultimate meaning of multi-phantom arrows. This is probably the most difficult smoke mission I have ever encountered. It was already halfway through July. He really wasn't sure if he could learn multi-arrow by the time August arrived. Although it was very difficult, he still had to do what he had to do. He decided to put down the burden of his thoughts and concentrate on learning archery. One day he would learn this complicated multi-arrow. Just as the Count had said at the Going Out to the Sea festival, don't be impatient, time is on your side. He was only 16 years old. He still had a long life ahead of him. The flower town was thriving with each passing day. There were no crises that could not be dealt with, so he could live a relaxed and happy life. The dream of riding a dragon could not be fulfilled in a hurry. In the blink of an eye, August arrived. During this half a month, Liszt had been frantically learning archery. He had successfully mastered triple arrow and had begun to move towards multi-arrow. The mares on the stud farm were basically all pregnant. Black Dragon had lost a lot of weight. Even with its dragon bloodline, it could not withstand the constant labor. Master, the stud farm's alfalfa has reached its limit. At present, the fief has a total of 15 horses, 5 stallions and 10 mares, all grazing on the stud farm. Apart from the 3 old mares that have lost their fertility, the other 7, including Fire Dragon, are already pregnant. One-Eyed Barton said, there are too many pregnant horses and Black Dragon is about to get hurt. Therefore they need a lot of nutrition. Relying on the stud farm's forage alone is definitely not enough. As long as the horses are raised well, just tell me what you need. Liszt was very concerned about the horses. For the sake of their health and nutrition, they need better concentrated fodder, preferably oats, barley and wheat bran. Peanuts and peas are also very good. This food was not worse than what the commoners ate and even more. At least in terms of quantity, a horse's daily rations were equivalent to that of 3 adults. List did not refuse, directly agreeing to One-Eyed Barton. All right. He also had the confidence to agree because after the Thorns Ridges Road was opened, the Flower Town's caravan could go out to do business unimpeded. At present they mainly sold seafood. The market had just opened and Tulip Castle was the main buyer. They would go once every 3 days and each time, they would purchase about half a gold coin worth of seafood. The Coral City citizens also began to enjoy the delicious seafood. They would also go once every 3 days and each time they would sell it for half a gold coin. In addition, the numerous lesser aristocrats living in the Coral City, as well as the aristocrats and citizens of the North Valley City, which was closest to the Flower Town, added up to 1 gold coin every 3 days. In other words, the Flower Town's caravan could earn 2 gold coins every 3 days. On average, they earned 67 silver coins a day. The cost of seafood and the cost of traveling were practically negligible. This was a net income. Of course, List had yet to see the gold and silver coins. Every time the caravan earned a bit, he would order them to purchase the items needed by the castle: salt, sugar, cloth, seasoning, soap, beer and so on. There was also the pig pancreas, which he had specifically ordered. He even had the caravan purchase 10 piglets, which he gave to the barley settlement serfs to raise in the future. Chicken and duck seedlings were temporarily out of season, so they could not be bought. Foals, calves and lambs were too expensive, so they could not be bought. For the time being, they had to rely on the town's own livestock production. This time the caravan brought back. Carter, who had finished the transaction with old Grandette, returned to the castle and reported to List. Chapter 83. Why was milk tea getting better and better every day? List discovered this problem more than half a month ago. At first, he thought that Moss and Patty's craftsmanship was improving, but it was impossible to feel the improvement of her craftsmanship every day. In fact, Master, Carter said, recently the desserts made with cream have also improved their taste. Mrs. Morrison and Mrs. Abbey think that this may be related to the dairy cows on the farm. Big Black and Big Yellow are pregnant with calves. The milk production is constantly improving, and the quality has also improved. Pregnant with calves can also improve the quality of milk? It's probably because the dairy farm has cultivated alfalfa. Compared with the previous 2-leaf clover, alfalfa is more nutritious. I went to the dairy farm to have a look. The 8 cows are in very good condition, especially the 3 calves. They are growing very fast and are about to enter the milk-producing period. Very good. When the calves grow up, there will be no shortage of milk to drink in the castle. List drank the cup of milk tea in 1 gulp. This time the calves in the cow's belly must be fed. Dairy cows were pregnant for about 9 months. In order to maintain milk production after giving birth to calves, they had to start getting pregnant. Therefore, a dairy cow could basically give birth to 1 calf a year. However, due to nutrition, hygiene, disease and other restrictions, the calf could not grow into a dairy cow. It was very likely that it would die midway. In this era, even human children had a great risk of dying prematurely. Even if the aristocrats had strong bodies and doctors to provide treatment, there was no guarantee that the baby would survive. After more than 10 years of breeding on the dairy farm, they had only raised 10 cows. Now that 2 old cows had been eaten by the invisible dragon, there were only 8 left. The pasture was enough to support a few more cows. Milk was an essential food for aristocrats. It was as important as bread and beer. List could not live without milk. He liked drinking milk tea very much. A cup of fresh milk in the morning, a cup of brewed milk for lunch and dinner, and a cup of milk tea before going to bed. The nutrition provided by 4 cups of milk tea made up for his daily consumption of qi cultivation. A knight's qi originated from the body. Without nutrition, how could there be qi? List wiped the milk tea foam from the corner of his mouth with a handkerchief. List suddenly wanted to bring out the pearl milk tea. However, there were no purple potatoes or pumpkins on the Coral Island, so it was impossible to produce pearls. Therefore, he could only continue to drink milk tea without any additives. When he first came to the castle, the milk tea brewed by Mrs. Morrison was not only a mixture of milk and black tea, but also minced meat, eggs, salt, sugar, salad, and so on, which were later forcibly removed by List. Restoring the original taste of the milk tea. After finishing the cup of milk tea, he said cheerfully, "When the income of the castle increases, I plan to raise a batch of cows and strive to let the servants and squires of the castle drink a cup of fresh milk every day. Carter replied with a smile, "You are always so generous. Only with a little kindness would a servant forever remain loyal." The most important reason was that he wanted to improve the nutrition treatment of the night squad. The next morning, he went to the horse field to practice the multiple arrows, no longer needing Marcus' guidance. Marcus was not far away. He was still training the night squad. The three retainer knight, Rome Winebarrel, Grey Sickle, and Odin Insole were also training with the night squad. Only Karl Hammerstein was no longer training with the squad and returned to List. He had successfully cultivated chi and became a trainee knight. His chi was of the water attribute and was very weak. Marcus judged that there was no potential to be unearthed. However, Karl was already very satisfied. These past few days he was so happy that he could not close his mouth. Having chi meant that he was strong, which meant that he was being put in an important position. "Karl, your chi talent has been developed too late, so it will stop here. Once the night squad is trained, it will be very difficult for you to get the opportunity to be my retainer knight. Therefore, I plan to have you work in the town." List was practicing archery while communicating with Karl. Karl was not young anymore. He had already married and had children in Coral City. He said with a solemn expression, "Sir, Karl is willing to follow you. I know your loyalty, but the position of retainer is not suitable for you. With your strength, competing with the youngsters of the night squad will be very disadvantageous." "Sir, Karl also understood that he could not compare to the youngsters of the night squad. This was because there were two youngsters, Philip Wool and Xavier Oxdung, who had cultivated chi earlier than him. One had wind attribute chi, while the other had lightning attribute chi. The remaining 10 youngsters had also cultivated chi and could obtain chi at any time. They had more than enough time to advance to become an Earth Knight. He was somewhat flustered. He was not a very smart person. Therefore, for a moment he became confused about his future. List sighed slightly in his heart. He was not an unreasonable and ruthless person. However, the retainer knight was even more so. They needed to protect him, so he could not be the slightest bit careless. "Go to the patrol squad. The patrol squad is made up of ordinary people. The security work needs a trainee knight to coordinate." "Yes, sir." Karl was a little disappointed. The patrol squad could not compare to the prestige of a lord's retainer knight. List could see that Karl was disappointed. He just said lightly, "I will grant you the status of a freedman and appoint you as the Flower Town's defense officer. You will assist Gort in managing the town's security. The patrol squad will be your direct subordinate. This position is very important. Do not let me down, Karl." The expression on his face changed from disappointment to pleasant surprise in an instant. Karl prostrated, "Sir, thank you for the promotion. Karl is willing to serve sir for life." In the afternoon, the news of Karl being promoted to a freedman and assuming the post of the Flower Town's defense officer spread throughout the horse farm. Marcus took advantage of a gap in the night squad's training to come over and instruct List in archery practice. They also chatted in passing. Sir, Karl's story made the night squad train more seriously. Especially Rome, Gray, and Odin, the three of them went all out in training. "Chi can change fate." It used to be more like a slogan. However, by giving them a living example, they will realize that it is not a slogan, but a real opportunity. List shook his aching wrist. Even he himself was working hard to become stronger. Marcus said, "Sir, it is you who gave them the opportunity to change their fate." There was nothing wrong with this statement. List expressed his approval. Immediately after, he no longer talked about this topic. Instead, he pulled out 4 arrows and practiced the spiral shadow arrow of multiple arrows, making the 4 arrows assume a spiral trajectory. This was the prerequisite to the ultimate meaning of multiple phantom arrow. The key lay in how to create the illusion effect of the arrows. He held 2 arrows between his index finger and 2 between his middle finger. He drew the bow and pulled the bowstring into a full moon. He aimed at the target not far in front of him and suddenly let go. The 4 arrows were shot at the same time. The magic power attached to the arrows dispersed in the air, driving the 4 arrows to spin. Unfortunately, when the magic power of one of the arrows dispersed, it went in the wrong direction, destroying the entire arrow formation. The airflow was twisted and the other 3 arrows were also affected, causing all 4 arrows to miss the target. Still not enough. List put down the bow and recalled what he had done wrong. There were too many things to learn in archery. He had to control the bowstring's strength, the arrow's direction, the balance of magic power, and he had to take into account how to break the wind resistance as well as the acceleration of gravity. Marcus looked at the trajectory of the arrows, his eyes shining. Chapter 84. This was not a compliment. List also felt that he was talented. Perhaps his body itself had a strong bloodline and excellent genes, far superior to that of ordinary people. Now that he had a soul that transcended the thinking of the times and a grasp of the principles, he could more clearly touch the essence of cultivation. Others might learn archery entirely to hone their experience. There was no knowledge of wind resistance, parabola, inertia, Newton's 3 laws, and so on. But he could, through some simple laws of physics, figure out the trajectory of the arrow, and thus master how to shape muscle memory faster so that he could quickly learn archery. What he lacked was only the ability to control the technical details. Summarize failure. Improve technique. Draw the bow and shoot the arrow again. List felt that this kind of simple cultivation, once devoted, was a kind of painful and happy enjoyment. Sir, I am going to take a day off to buy out the serf status of my family and bring them to live in the flower town. Carl smoothly handed over the position of defense officer and finished lecturing the patrol team in the afternoon. In the evening he attended the banquet upstairs in the castle for the first time. He was fidgeting with excitement. List took a bite of bread and responded, "I will allow you to take a day off. Feel free to bring your family to live. Teacher Gort will take care of the work. By the way, do you have enough money to buy out the serf status?" "I have saved up enough. Rome and the others lent me a little. There are only 4 people in my family, my parents, my younger brother, and my younger sister. The money on hand is just enough to buy out the serf status. If it is not enough, don't hesitate to ask me for an advance salary or a low-interest loan." Carl was previously a retainer knight. His family was the serf of the Tulip family. Now that he had obtained the status of a freedman, he wanted to free his family from their serf status. As an aristocratic follower, he had enough power to protect his family. Gort raised his glass to Carl and congratulated him. "Blair and Marcus families have devoted themselves to their new lives and are doing very well. Your family will do the same." Carl drank the beer in his glass and said excitedly, "The flower town will get better and better. The glory of the night is watching over this place, watching over Sir." "I agree." Marcus also raised his glass and drank his beer. Blair and Isaiah also raised their cups and drank to their heart's content. Gort, who was a good drinker, finished his cup and waited for the servant to fill it again before he impatiently raised his cup. "In that case, let us toast for the flower town for Sir." He finished his glass of wine. Gort added, "Carl, come back as soon as possible. 3 days from now, there will be a caravan from the North Valley city coming to the flower town. The patrol team will have to supervise the whole process and inform them of the flower town's rules. I will return as soon as possible. I won't delay my work," Carl hurriedly said. "Dosen, release your magic." Outside the castle, List held Dosen's leash and gave out orders. Dosen immediately opened his mouth and roared in the direction of his finger. In an instant, a rock spike emerged from the ground. When List left with Dosen, the serving men in the castle immediately rushed over and dug the rock spikes out of the soil with a shovel. This rock spike was a solid stone that was condensed from the soil by the magic of the earth attribute. It was very hard with the hardness of granite. Every day, Dosen could produce a lot of such rock spikes, and then the serving men would collect the rock spikes and use them to pave the road. List demanded that a stone road be built between the castle and the town's main road that could be passed even on rainy days. Otherwise, when it rained, they would not even be able to go out. Now the road had been built to be 40 meters long. "Dosen, go." List continued to train Dosen. He had specially bought back the hares that the hunters had caught. These hares were the training materials for Dosen. The hares ran quickly on the ground and could make all kinds of sudden stops and changes in direction. Even if Dosen was a World of Warcraft and was known as the King of Thorns Ridge, it still had to spend a lot of effort to catch up with the hares. After running for about a kilometer on the horse track, it pressed the hares to the ground and bit its neck. It killed the hares. Dosen directly threw the hare's corpse to the side. It no longer ate raw food. Its mouth had been raised by List and it only ate cooked food. GG. List wore a leather glove on his left hand, and a big furry bird stood on it. It was Blessed Curls, a winged peregrine falcon chick. It could not fly yet, but it had a very loud voice, GG, GG all day long. It also had a big appetite and could eat several fish in one meal. Hearing Blessed Curls cry, Dosen immediately turned around and rushed to List's side, drooling at Blessed Curls. Must want to eat a bird and have a taste. GG. GG. Blessed Curls flapped its wings, somewhat eager to try flying. Once the layer of fluff fell off and was replaced with flight feathers, it would probably be time to try flying. List had a headache. Birds yearned for the sky and it was very difficult to bind them to the ground. However, it did not have the behavior of recognizing an owner. On Coral Island there was no one who could domesticate birds. Don't cry or I'll braise you. List handed Blessed Curls to Thomas. Thomas hurriedly caught Blessed Curls with his gloved hand, for fear that it would fall and be eaten by Dosen. This Blessed Curls was now about the size and weight of a sausage. Thomas had some difficulty holding it with one hand. List understood his difficulty. Take it back to the nest. Yes, master. When Thomas sent Blessed Curls away and returned, List had already trained Dosen to the point of gasping for breath. Take Dosen back and tie him up. I'm going to start practicing archery. Yes, master. Upon seeing this, two robust youngsters next to him hurriedly stepped forward and handed the bow and arrows to List. Sir, your bow and arrows. They were Philip Wool and Xavier Oxdung, members of the night squad who had already cultivated chi. They no longer needed to train with the night squad every day and began to serve as a retainer knight. List received the bow and arrows. List quickly entered a state of mind and practiced multiple arrows. Now he only had Spiral Shadow Arrow to learn. He had already successfully learned the other 4 moves, but he was not very proficient. Today I will try to master Spiral Shadow Arrow, and tomorrow I will start practicing multiple Phantom Arrow. From morning to afternoon. Sweat dripped over and over again. Finally, when the sun was setting, he successfully cast Spiral Shadow Arrow. 4 arrows spiraled and shot, instantly turning into numerous phantoms before finally hitting the target. Phew. List heaved a sigh of relief. He rubbed his wrist. Today's archery practice was over. In another week, I should be able to master multiple Phantom Arrow. With this thought in mind, he summoned the smoke mission and habitually swept it with a glance. However, with a glance, he found that the serpentines had changed. Mission completed. Reward, Black Pearl of the Deep Sea. Mission, a caravan is about to arrive at the Flower Town. This is the first time a caravan has come to trade since the Lord took office. Please ensure that the transaction amount reaches 3 gold coins or above in order to attract the caravan to come again. Reward, a bottle that drifts with the current. List was surprised. When did I actually complete the mission? I clearly haven't learned the ultimate meaning of multiple Phantom Arrow. Suddenly he remembered. When he practiced multiple arrows, one of Marcus's multiple Phantom Arrow had missed the target. Does this mean that Marcus hasn't actually grasped the ultimate meaning? He shot 2 sets of arrows and missed the target, so it can't be considered as having grasped it? Therefore, I only need to learn double arrow, triple arrow, and multiple arrow to complete the mission? There was no doubt that this was the case. Chapter 87. The giant clam shell was very difficult to pry open. Without tools, the fishermen were helpless. List didn't force it. In any case, it was fine as long as the black pearl couldn't run away. After the large cuttlefish was dismembered and the rotten corpse was thrown into the sea, List ordered people to carry the giant clam back to the castle and slowly study it. The giant clam had a strange shape. Along the way, it attracted the attention of many townspeople. When they arrived at the castle, all the servants also ran out to watch. No one had ever seen such a strange thing. Teacher Marcus, how do you think we should open it? Marcus pondered for a moment and said, It is very strong. The 2 pieces of shell are firmly fixed, but its shell is irregular. There are many gaps and we can use a stick to pry it open. Ordinary wooden sticks won't do. It would be best to use a thick iron stick. However, there shouldn't be such an iron stick. Iron tools were very precious. No one would use iron or to forge a thick iron stick specially used to pry open the giant clam shell. Perhaps we can use fire. Carter suggested. The shell is too thick. It would be difficult for fire to harm it. List rejected it. There were still black pearls inside. If it were to be cooked. Use hooks. 2 hooks each hook a piece of shell. Then use the horses to pull the shell open. Marcus finally thought of a stupid method. However, the result was good. When the 2 horses each pulled a rope and almost broke the rope, the giant clam shell was finally pulled open. The giant clam was like a blooming flower. It didn't open too much, but the bands supporting the shell could already be found, which were the adductor muscles. Marcus clenched his 2-handed sword. His chi gushed out and directly cut off one of the bands. Clatter. The horse that pulled the giant clam shell with all its might directly split it into two halves, and it could no longer be closed. List's gaze was already fixed on the group of protrusions on the giant clam's inner wall. The protrusions were round and hidden inside were the pearls. Cut it open carefully. There are pearls inside. Don't scratch the pearls. Yes, sir. Marcus used the knife personally and carefully cut open the protruding membrane. When the largest protruding membrane was cut open, a shiny black pearl was revealed. It was the size of a wash basin. There are more on the side. Cut them all open and take them out. List was very excited. He hadn't figured out what these black pearls could do, but it was still incredible to find such a large black pearl. If this was placed in his hometown, it would definitely fetch a sky-high price. When Marcus finished cutting, he took out a total of 16 black pearls of different sizes. The biggest one was the size of a wash basin. Next were 2 basketball-sized pearls, followed by 3 bowl-sized pearls, followed by a large pile of apples, oranges, and ping-pong balls. After cleaning it, List held the largest black pearl in his hands and suddenly felt that there seemed to be traces of magic power flowing on the pearl. He quickly cast magic eyes, and then saw a whirlpool-like deep magic power inside the black pearl. The color was light blue, which was the color of water magic. It actually has magic power? He had previously used magic eyes to observe the giant clam and didn't find the slightest trace of magic power. Who would have thought that the black pearls actually had magic power? Sir, these black pearls seem to have magic power? Marcus also found the abnormality, but he didn't have magic eyes and didn't dare to make a judgment. It does indeed have magic power. List swayed the black pearls, thinking of the night novels he had read. One of the night novels seemed to have recorded that the song of the siren could calm the storm of the sea. There was a great knight who captured the siren and made it into a piece of magic equipment. This piece of equipment could allow the ship to sail steadily even in the midst of a storm. No one knew what the siren was. Some people swore that they had heard the song of the siren. Costo had just said that he had heard the song of the siren, but there was no record of what the siren was. Most people thought that the siren was just a story made up by sailors. This story had nothing to do with the black pearls. What made List think of it was the equipment made by the siren to protect the ship against the storm. Can these black pearls also be made into magic equipment to resist the storm? After all, it is a magic item with the water attribute, and the magic power is also very rich, almost comparable to the gems produced by dragons. I don't know if it would work to suppress the storm at sea, but it should be possible to make magic equipment. Without a mage, it was impossible to study the black pearls. List felt that they could also be used for other purposes, for example as an air conditioner. Teacher Marcus, Mr. Carter, everyone, do you feel that the air is much cooler? Marcus carefully felt it. I don't feel cool, but the moisture in the air seems to have increased. It should be that the black pearls condensed the surrounding water vapor. In any case, they are good things. If you want to sell them, how many gold coins do you think they can be sold for? I have seen fist-sized white pearls. I heard from others that they are worth at least 5 gold coins. I guess that black pearls of the same size should be sold for 10 gold coins? As for the largest black pearl, sir, I can't estimate its value. It is a brand new pearl. It has a very rich magic power, definitely more valuable than white pearls, but the castle is not short of money for the time being. Its price should be considered again. List was not very satisfied with Marcus' valuation. He felt that even if the black pearl was twice the price of white pearls, it was still underestimated. Its value was probably far greater than imagined. So he said to Carter, Mr. Carter, move them to my study. He kept a ping-pong ball-sized black pearl in his hand, carefully playing with it. Yes, master. After a moment, Carter came back and asked, Master, what about the giant clam? Can its meat be eaten? I think it can. Well, let Dosen have a taste first. In case it is poisonous, just throw it away. What about the 2 shells? Clean the inside of the shell. I want to see if it has turned into jade. Jade giant clams in List's hometown were precious jewels, one of the 7 treasures of Buddhism. In the West, giant clams, pearls, corals, and amber stood side by side, known as the 4 great organic jewels. Jade giant clams were the whitest substance in the world. It was formed by the inside of the giant clam that had turned into jade. Such a big giant clam, there should be a part of it that has turned into jade. However, List soon realized that he was wrong. Although the giant clam was huge, there was no sign of the inside of it turning into jade. At this time, he remembered that it was impossible for a living giant clam to turn into jade. It took time for it to turn into jade, just like the gestation of jade, it needed thousands of years of precipitation and carving before it could be produced. Jade giant clams were dead giant clams buried in the sand, and after thousands of years they gradually turned into jade. Without jade it could not be made into jewels. List had a wild idea. "Mr. Carter, what do you think would happen if it was made into a bed?" Chapter 88. The giant clam's shell was very large, more than 2 meters long and nearly 2 meters wide. List's height had been growing and he was now almost 1.85 meters tall, so he could still sleep in the giant clam's shell. Of course, this proposal was just a casual remark. The giant clam's shell was too strange. With its large wavy shape, it was not suitable to be made into a bed. He had people place the giant clam's shell at the castle's gate, using it as a huge sculpture. It had to be said that the giant clam's shell, with its internal organs removed and cleaned, looked very beautiful. After dealing with the giant clam's matter, List returned to the study and began to study the black pearls. Carter had moved the black pearls to the study, but now, except for the small black pearl in List's hand, no other black pearls could be seen, because they had been stuffed into the space gem on his chest by List. He chose to keep valuable items close to his body. So when Carter brought a glass of juice, he said in surprise, "Master, I clearly put the black pearls on this shelf, how come they are gone?" "I hid them, don't be surprised." "Very well." Carter didn't ask carefully where List hid the black pearls. As a steward, he didn't need to know. All he needed to do was to serve the master and manage the castle's daily affairs. Drinking the juice. After half a day of fumbling, List gradually had a basic understanding of the black pearls. It is very rich in magic, not much worse than the gems produced by dragons. But compared to the continuous supply of magic from gems, the black pearl's magic seems to need to be replenished. "I don't have water magic, so I can't replenish it." The ping-pong ball-sized black pearl in his hand was constantly emitting magic fluctuations. This kind of fluctuation was completely different from the dragon gem. He used words that he could understand to distinguish the two. The dragon gem is more like a stable magnetic field formed by magic, it won't dissipate. The black pearl is more like a radioactive object, constantly emitting magic. After a long time you can feel the loss of magic. So, in essence, the black pearl was a lot lower than the dragon gem. A dragon gem could easily be sold for 700 to 800 gold coins. Just like what Marcus said, a black pearl could probably be sold for around 10 gold coins. However, who knows what kind of sky-high price a basin-sized black pearl can fetch. I believe that those great nobles who are crazy about treasures and collecting antiques will be willing to buy them with dragon coins. A dragon coin was worth 10,000 gold coins. It was very difficult for great nobles who weren't especially rich to use dragon coins. Thinking so, he was unperturbed. "I always feel that the reward for the smoke mission this time is the most substantial. The reward content isn't too generous, but it's no different from giving money for free. It's real." Up until now he had completed a total of 18 quests. He had not figured out the pattern of the quests, nor had he grasped the pattern of the rewards. However, most of the mission rewards were very valuable. If one had to measure them, the World of Warcraft rewards like Dosen and Blessed Curls were worth around 100 gold coins. The productivity rewards like Sprite Worms were worth around 1 or 2,000 gold coins. Sprite Worms were indeed magical and rare, but they only had a lifespan of 10 years, which was a huge constraint. Things like the Black Tulip, Flame Mushroom, and Dragon Stallion were worth an acceptable price of 1 dragon coin. Chi's secret skills like Magic Eyes were worth 3,000 gold coins. Things like Corngrass, Smokegrass, Super Small Saltpeter Mine, and 50 People, although their value was a bit hard to calculate, they were still very valuable. As for the information about the Invisible Dragon, that was another matter. The most valuable thing was the Invisible Dragon Gem, a gem with its own space, which was a priceless treasure. However, these rewards would either require a long period of development before they could fully display their value, or they wouldn't be able to display their value due to various factors, or they would simply get into trouble because of their wealth. For example, the space gem wouldn't be exposed at all, as it would attract disaster. However, the current black pearls were different. Their value was very high. The 16 black pearls of various sizes could be sold for at least 10,000 gold coins. The key was that they could be sold separately. After all, these things were not a set, they were all individual items. Should I sell them or sell them or sell them? List pondered for a moment and decided to take out a bowl-sized black pearl to test the market. Yesterday, Carter told him that August 19th was Levis's birthday and asked what gift he wanted. When the time came, he would go to Tulip Castle to participate in the other party's birthday party. As a gift, just some high-grade seafood will do. I can also ask him if he has any plans to buy black pearls. The Tulip family has water-attributed chi, so they should have a need for black pearls. I can ask a wizard to help me forge a magic equipment. When the time comes, he can also answer my doubts about how black pearls can be used. No one was better at studying magic items than wizards. It was hard to say whether there were wizards on the Coral Island, but the Tulip family could definitely contact a wizard. If the price was right, List was ready to sell a few black pearls first, raise a sum of gold coins, and then give them to Levis to continue to help him buy serfs. He also had to buy some pig iron and wrought iron to be handed over to the blacksmith shop to forge farm tools. He was very dissatisfied with the inefficiency of the town's serfs in farming. There was no way to get cattle for the time being, and the study of plows would take time. Therefore he could only forge more shovels and hoes so that all serfs could plow the fields more efficiently. Thus, some serfs would be liberated from the farmland and put into other professions. If I sell them for a high price, I can buy some calves, foals, lambs, and concentrate fodder for pregnant horses. By the way, I can repair the castle. It is best to build a fire bed. It is going to be winter soon. In this era of no heating, I can only enjoy it by burning a fire bed. Being far-sighted was probably how List was described. Not long after the beginning of summer, he was already thinking about winter's life. The North Valley City's caravan arrived at the flower town before 8 o'clock in the morning. After more than 8 months, the caravan entered the flower town again. In the past, the caravan would follow the tax night and come once a season, except for winter. In other words, 3 times a year. Every time the caravan came, the team would be as lively as a New Year's Day. This time was no exception. The mighty caravan quickly attracted all the residents of the town. Basically, they put down their work and came to watch. List, who had finished his morning exercise and no longer touched the bow and arrow, returned to the castle to take a bath. Standing in front of the window, he could see the bustling crowd of the town. In particular, the clowns who had set up the stage and began to perform burlesque attracted the attention of the vast majority of the town's residents. The laughter and cheers could even be heard in the castle. "Maggie, go and call Mr. Carter," he said to the maid Maggie, who was cleaning. "Yes, master." Soon Carter rushed over. "Master, you were looking for me? The town is very lively today. Tell everyone in the castle that if they want to rest today, they can go directly to the castle to rest. Go to the town to see the burlesque, or buy some snacks and relax. You are really a generous aristocrat. I will tell the servants the truth. Including you, Mr. Carter." Chapter 89. Mrs. Abby, Little Lily and I are going to the town to see the burlesque. Would you like to go with us? Irene moved the large piece of giant clam meat from the basket outside the castle to dry. Dosen had eaten a large piece of giant clam meat yesterday. Not only was he fine, he was also full of vigor. Therefore, giant clam meat could be eaten. Oh heavens! Why is the master so generous to let you have a holiday? Mrs. Abby busily arranged the various seasonings on the stove. If you like being a maid, then you should obediently stay in the kitchen. There are a lot of things to do every day. Mr. Carter said that the master only needs a fried steak for lunch, while we servants can eat beans and bread. We don't need to do much work. Little Lily was also moving the giant clam meat. A giant clam weighed more than 500 jin. After removing the 300 jin shell, there was still more than 200 jin of meat. Mr. Carter is the same as the master, always indulging you young servants who don't work hard. This is not the benevolence of a qualified butler. When I was young, I was busy all day in the kitchen, never idle for even a moment. That is the working attitude a kitchen maid should have. Cough, cough. Carter's cough came from the door. At some point, he had already arrived. Although I can understand Mrs. Abby's serious attitude towards work, you shouldn't always be so tense. Go stroll around the town with the young people. It's rare for a caravan to come. Sorry, Mr. Carter, I didn't mean to offend you. Mrs. Abby felt a little embarrassed. She had just been caught speaking ill of him behind his back. It doesn't matter. In fact, you said I'm benevolent, so I take it as a compliment. Go with Irene and Little Lily to see the town's burlesque. Those clowns will make me laugh when I think of them. That won't do, I have to make lunch for the master. Then hurry back before 11 o'clock. It's 9 o'clock now, we can still stroll around for 2 hours. Not waiting for Mrs. Abby to refuse, Carter interrupted her. Just consider it a task I gave you and have fun for 2 hours. Ah, Mr. Carter, you are good. Irene happily pulled Abby's arm. Let's go, Mrs. Abby, I can't wait to see the clown. Little Lily pulled Abby's other arm. Yes, yes, let's go. Mrs. Abby had no choice but to half push them out. I don't want to go shopping, but I'd better keep an eye on you two in case you go crazy and forget to come back to work. Also, wait a minute, I'm going to change my clothes. I can't go out dressed like this, it would lose the castle's dignity. Carter smiled as he looked at the two children and the big one making a ruckus. Compared to working in the Count's other castle, the work in this small town's castle was a bit busier, but life was more lively. The youthful vigor of youth made him feel an inexplicable motivation in his body, as if he was younger than last year. He heard footsteps. He turned around and saw that it was Mrs. Morrison. Maggie and the others have already gone shopping in town? Yes, Tom and Thomas went with them. Mr. Carter, are you not going with them? Mrs. Abby, Irene, and little Lily are changing their clothes. They are going to the town to see a burlesque. I think you should go with them. As for the castle, I will stay here to serve the master. You know, even Thomas has left. If the master wants to drink water, there will always be a manservant to serve him. Then I will also stay here. If there is anything, you can call me. Are you sure you don't want to join in the fun? I'm already old, I can't wait to avoid the fun, how could I want to join in? Don't say that, Mrs. Morrison. I feel that the more I live, the younger I am. Carter straightened his chest, making himself look more spirited. Yes, young Carter. Annie, have you sold more than half of the tomatoes? John Shoulderpole walked to his stall. The stall was located on the southwest side of the town, where a large flat area had been cleared. Caravans that came to the town were arranged to do business here. There were also a few wooden toilets outside. The patrol team and the town clerk shouted over and over again, Sir Lord has decreed that no one is allowed to urinate or defecate anywhere. Violators will be fined and whipped. If you want to go to the toilet, follow the arrow and go to the toilet outside. The one with the circle below and the arrow pointing up, male sign, is the men's toilet sign. The one with the circle above and the cross below, female sign, is the women's toilet sign. Don't get it wrong. John was already used to this instruction. It had been a long time since he had defecated on the street. His family had prepared a manure bucket and stored the excrement and urine. After the manure was removed, it would be directly used to compost the tomato fields. This was a farming magic taught by the Sir Lord. The farmers who used this magic to fertilize the fields could have a harvest of 20 to 30% more than before. Previously, the town's officials organized the purchase of manure. But now they could no longer be collected. Every household kept the manure and planted it in their own fields. After the harvest, the kind and generous Sir Lord only collected taxes in proportion, unlike the previous tax knight who could not wait to collect all of the serf's harvest. Since the arrival of the Sir Lord, John felt that not only himself, but also the surrounding neighbors had undergone earth-shaking changes. Of course, he was the luckiest one. Because the Sir Lord rewarded him with a nalda because the tomatoes he had taken care of had bred a tomato worm. John, aren't you going to work with the house-building team today? Annie asked her husband curiously. There was not much farm work now. Her husband was working with the house-building team for a copper a day. The house-building team is on holiday. No one wants to work today, so they all came here, to the commercial district. John pointed to a place not far away. Look, that's Wenger. He's also shopping with his son. Well, then let's go watch the skits. I've sold all the tomatoes, so I want to go watch the skits. I haven't seen one for a long time. John did not leave. Instead, he said, by the way, Annie, when I came over there, I saw someone selling kittens. I want to buy one. You know, now that we have food in our house, the number of rats has begun to increase. These dirty thieves, they always steal our food. Really? Is there anyone selling kittens? Then wait here for me. After I sell all the tomatoes, we'll go buy kittens together. We must choose a kitten that can catch rats the best. After hesitating for a moment, John added, actually, I also want to buy a foal. I want little Jack to learn how to ride from an early age, so that he can become a retainer knight of Sir Lord earlier. Oh my God, John, do you know how much a foal costs? 50 silver coins, but Annie, that is a foal. John explained hopefully, if we miss this opportunity, I don't know when we will get a horse again. I want to grow tomatoes for Sir Lord for a lifetime, but little Jack doesn't like it. He wants to become a retainer knight. But John, you need to understand we can afford 50 silver coins, but foals need to eat a lot every day. A horse needs to eat at least several people's food. Can we afford it? I can. John said with a firm look in his eyes. The tomato field at home is the best, it can always bring us a stable income. I can also work. I asked the house building team's manager, he is Sir Isaiah's assistant. He told me that there will be more and more work in the town in the future. Sir Lord is ambitious and wants to make the town look new. As long as I can continue to work, we can afford to raise foals. Are you serious, John? Of course, believe me, Annie. Annie looked at her husband's firm eyes and finally couldn't bear to refuse. All right, but you have to promise me that we won't be dragged down by foals, right? You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.